I'm opening the meeting for Planning and Zoning Commission Wednesday, March 25th. May I have a roll call for 2026? May I have a roll call vote, please?
Daryl here.
Lynn here?
Michael here.
One at a time, please. Who? Eric, are you here?
Eric here.
Amanda, are you here?
Amanda here.
Jeff, are you here? Jeff, we cannot hear you.
I'm here.
There you are. Michael, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
flag
of the United
United
States of
States of
America
America and to the
The
republic
republic for which it stands,
one nation,
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and
and
justice
justice for all.
for all.
Thank you. Okay, has everybody read tonight's agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
And are there any changes or corrections or additions?
No changes.
May I have a motion, please?
I make a motion to approve tonight's agenda for Wednesday, March 25th, 2026.
May I have a second?
Second.
Who was that?
Jeff.
Jeff. Motion by Michael, second by Jeff. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, next, the approval of the minutes of March 11th. Is everybody okay with what they got? Are there any things that need to be changed, etc.?
None for me.
None for me.
I make a
None.
motion.
Wait, anybody else? No?
No.
Okay.
I make a motion that we accept the March 11th, 2026 minutes as presented.
May I have a roll call? May I, all in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry,
Second.
second. Amanda, second.
Whatever.
Okay. I'm gonna go a little slower so that we can get this into a roll call thing. Okay, Amanda seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Is there anybody who has a declaration of conflict of interest with tonight?
No.
No?
No.
And we have no public comment here, but we'll open a public comment. Is there anybody on Zoom?
No public comment.
No public? No special presentations?
Nope.
Design review and land use public hearings 0070 Miles End Lane, changes to approved plans. Madison?
So this is a single family home that's previously been approved. They're proposing the addition of a chimney, which adds 7 square feet to the building and impervious coverage. It doesn't really get any closer to setbacks. Like setbacks are still fine, building impervious coverage limitations are fine. Everything's still fine. It technically increases what was previously approved. And then if you'll notice, they also changed a lot of the siding, which normally goes through staff, but we called attention to it anyways, just because there were a lot of changes to the exterior materials. But yeah, so staff is recommending approval. Do you have any questions?
Let's start with Jeff. Jeff, do you have any questions?
No, I think it looks fine.
Eric?
Nope, looks good.
Amanda?
No questions.
Michael?
No, I think it looks better than original.
I do.
And Daryl has one.
And this is probably for Scott. Does the chimney, does that change the height situation?
It does not. So if you'll notice in the staff report, I call out that the code specifically exempts chimneys from building height calculations unless they are more than 10 feet above the allowed building height within that zone district. And since this comes nowhere close to being 10 feet above the building height limitation, then it does not change the building height.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I have none. May I have a motion, please?
Any public comment?
Yes.
Oh, thank you, Michael. But we have no public here. There's nobody.
Not unless Taylor or Don want to say anything.
I'm
Taylor
good.
or Don, you're good?
I'm good as well.
Thank you, Taylor. Okay, we'll close public comment.
I make a motion for approval to change to approved plans for 0070 Miles End Lane.
May I have a second, please?
I second.
Motion by Michael, second by Amanda. Roll call vote, please. Jeff?
Aye.
Eric can't, everybody's here. Michael?
Aye.
Amanda?
Aye.
Daryl?
Aye.
Lynn? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a great
good
evening.
night.
Thanks.
Next, we have Minturn Forward. Where is it?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Article 3, subdivision and development standards.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to let Matt jump right in. I think it's safe to say that Madison and Matt and I have spent a ton of time over the last month and a half trying to bring this last part of the development standards back to you. There still are some sections of this article that we're still working on, or which we might just due to time constraints, save for a later date. But I'll let Matt get into that. He did provide a memo that hopefully explains some of the things that we've been working on. And with that, unless you have any questions of me, Matt, do you want to start leading us through this? And I think, Lynn, you intend to go kind of page by page, section by section, as we've done before, and see if anyone has any questions or wants to discuss.
Correct. And to make it a little easier, if we can try to do a flow through constantly of the same people, so because we're not seeing each other, we can start with Jeff and Eric. You're at the top of the screen, and then go down to Amanda, Michael, and then Daryl and I. Is that okay?
I'm writing it
Page
down.
by page.
Amanda.
No. Jeff, Michael, Amanda.
Jeff, Eric, Amanda, Michael, Daryl, Lynn.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Matt.
All
you're up.
right. Thank you, guys. So what's in front of you this evening is the second part of Article 3, and this is still just an initial draft of Article 3, which is a new component of the updated land use code. And we'll be bringing you a third part of Article 3, hopefully in the next month, if not sooner. And so within this second part of Article 3, we've tried to consolidate a bunch of existing sections in the land use the town's land use regulations, and that includes hillside building regulations, landscaping standards, water efficient landscape standards, landscape standards, and included with some of those landscape standards are submittal requirements for a landscape plan, and the intent there is to pull out those submittal requirements and include those in another part of the land use code that will be specific to submittal requirements for different types of plans, like a grading plan, landscape plan, things like that. We've also so there's installation and maintenance of landscaping standards that we've incorporated, and then exterior illumination standards, or other aka outdoor lighting standards. We've also more or less pulled apart Appendix B, which is Minturn's design standards and guidelines. And the reason for that is we felt it was important to the usability of the updated land use code to try and consolidate, again, the different bits and pieces of the existing land use regulations into this subdivision to development standards article. And in Appendix B right now, there's standards related to site planning, building design. There are standards that are specific to character areas, and because we've gotten moved away from character areas, we've done our best to try and pull in those standards that and modify those standards that made sense to be applicable in specific zone districts, and we can get into that a little later on. But So for example, there were some standards for the Grouse Creek character area, and Grouse Creek more or less has become the new makerspace zone district. So we pulled in some Grouse Creek character area standards that made sense to apply specifically to the new makerspace zone district. But we also, where it made sense, tried to pull standards for the specific character areas out and incorporate those into town-wide standards. And in the draft of Article 3 that you all received, we tried our best to provide comments in the margin to try and highlight where we incorporated different standards. The other piece of Appendix B that we're still working on is folding in the 100 block standards, design standards. And I know all along we've said we're not doing anything with those standards. There's some minor modifications that we're making to help integrate that into the design standard subdivision design standard article, but we're not making any substantive changes. And again, we'll bring those in front of you all so you can see what we've done. But it's not, we're not making any or trying not to make any major or substantive changes to the 100 block and really trying to leave those as is. I kind of breezed over the remaining part of Article 3 that we're going to be bringing to you a little later on. And in that third part of Article 3, what we'll have for you are public land dedication requirements, wildlife protection standards, drainage and stormwater standards, erosion control and sedimentation standards, reclamation and noxious weed standards, fence and screening standards, and then the 100 block standards. So I know that was a lot. That was my hope was to kind of try and provide some context as to how we develop the second part of Article 3 that is in front of you tonight. And before we dig into Article 3, I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Michael? Not Michael, I'm sorry. Jeff? Anything?
No.
Eric? Anything? He's shaking his head no. Eric, we cannot hear you. Or I cannot hear you.
No general questions, just a
There
few
you are.
pages, sorry.
Okay. Amanda?
No questions.
Michael?
No questions.
Daryl?
Nope.
Nor do I. I'm going to put my cheat sheet here with the initials so I know who comes first and last. Okay, so we're gonna start with I made a cheat sheet.
Okay.
Okay. Page 44. Does anybody have anything there? Starting with Jeff.
No, ma'am.
Eric.
No.
Amanda.
So we're moving the waiver process out of this section to beginning of Article 3. Can you just, staff, remind us, are there any other additional requirements that weren't previously in this waiver request that are now part of the waiver as we move into Article 3? So I know that there's other waivers available. Did we increase the scope of this waiver request by moving it?
So I can respond to that. So the waiver for high hydrozone landscaping standards is an existing waiver that's underneath the town's landscape standards. We thought it would make sense, and I know you don't have the first part of Article 3 in front of you, but there was another waiver process that was created to, if somebody came in with a project and wanted to request a waiver from the subdivision and design standards that are in Article 3, that's sort of a general waiver process. This waiver process is specific to high hydrozone landscaping. It's anything that's in black text is existing code language, and then all the red line is are changes we made. We tried to clean up and clarify when this waiver would be applicable. And so it says as part of a design review, design review or minor design review application, that's when somebody would request this waiver, and they have to include that waiver as part of their application. There's the criteria listed under waiver request under bullet point B, that those criteria are from the existing code. And then we tried to clarify kind of how the waiver process works. So again, all the other red line text in here is new. And the intent of that was to clarify the process. So as part of the design review or minor design review application review, the planning commission or staff will look at the waiver request, evaluate it based on the criteria from the existing code, and then make a decision whether or not to approve or deny the waiver. And the reason we did that is to provide some greater detail as to how this whole waiver process works.
Okay.
Hopefully that helps.
Just so I summarize and make sure that it's clear on record that this won't be like lumped in with the other waiver processes. It'll still remain its own unique waiver process. It's just moving sections due to, making it more streamlined in chapter 3 or article 3.
That's correct. So this waiver process that's in this second part of Article 3 is specific only to high hydro zone landscaping. And so yeah, it wouldn't apply anywhere else. It would if somebody came in for a request for to have, and we can get into the high hydro zone standards once we get to that part of Article 3, but there's restrictions on how much, more or less how sort of water plant materials that require a lot of water. That's what there's standards that try and restrict that, just given kind of the limited availability of water in Minturn. And this waiver process allows for somebody to come in and say, I want to do a greater amount of landscaping that is water intensive, and they'd have to go through this waiver process to be allowed to do that.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks. That was my only question, Lynn. Thank you.
Michael,
I have no questions on this page.
Daryl,
Nope, nothing.
having been a landscaper for all of my life, will there be a definition for high hydrozone? What is it? Hydrozone turf.
There already.
Most people just say grass that requires a lot of water. And I know an architect will know, but we talked at the very beginning to make this so the average person can go through and understand it quickly.
Yeah, Lynn, I think we already have that definition when we integrated the hydro zones and the water-wise landscaping standards a few years ago into the code. We had to adopt definitions, but we should, when we get to the definition section, review the definition of a high hydro zone area and make sure it makes sense.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Page 45. Jeff,
No, nothing.
Eric,
I just had a question because I felt like we talked about this one meeting about the extension of the sidewalks, or if they were connecting to other, because this just states that they need to be on every, through the subdivision itself. Are we connecting it to any other sidewalks that are in the town?
who would like to take that? Jeff? Scott, Madison, Matt?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I know the discussion we had, or part of the discussion we had last time was we as staff had kind of raised an option of having a cash in lieu option or a deferral, so to avoid sort of bits and pieces of sidewalk around town. This kind of revised language doesn't, I think ultimately the decision was not to have sort of a cash in lieu option or an alternative, and just to require folks to build sidewalks when they do a subdivision or development. To your question, it does not specifically say in here that if you're doing a new subdivision or a new development, that the sidewalk you're required to build has to connect to existing sidewalks in town. I think there is certainly an option to do that. I guess my only concern or hesitation there is, what if you're doing a sidewalk that, or I'm sorry, doing a subdivision where there's existing sidewalks are maybe a significant distance away, and it becomes a substantial cost to connect your subdivision to where existing sidewalks exist in town, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I just thought we came to a conclusion, or at least we were a discussion when we were talking about it last time.
And I think the conclusion was that we wouldn't give the option for cash in lieu, so people would still have to put in sidewalk in front of their own project. But I agree with Matt. I don't think we can necessarily make people connect a sidewalk that's like half a mile away that crosses over property that they don't own. So instead, we would essentially be potentially creating islands where the town could come in and connect between those, if that makes sense.
I have a recommendation. In the section above street and alley standards, there's specific language that basically says that streets and alleys need to extend within a new subdivision. They need to extend to the boundary of that property. And it feels like that's kind of the same thing. Could we add language under sidewalk standards that essentially says the same thing? If you're putting in sidewalks, make sure they're not, if there's a future subdivision next to you or there's future town improvements, then it makes sense to be able to extend those or connect those to adjoining property or adjoining sections of sidewalk, something like that. Is that what we're getting at?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I say something, Lynn? Or are we going down the line?
We're going down the line. Amanda,
No comments, no additional comments.
Michael, now you can say something.
Yeah, I think that what Eric said, and I think we had a pretty unanimous consensus that we were talking about people, even if it was a sidewalk to nowhere in front of their property, they had to put the sidewalks, and eventually the neighboring property at some point would potentially and hopefully connect to it. I think that Scott's idea about adding sidewalks in the language, so there's sidewalks, say for example, in a subdivision on any street in that subdivision, is a good idea.
Thank you, Michael. Do you have anything else on page 45?
No, that's all I have.
Daryl?
No.
Daryl has nothing, and I have nothing.
So Matt, can we work on some
So we will
language
give
that might,
you direction. Does everybody want to put a finger up as to putting things in like Scott suggested? Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
I
yes,
have
yes.
I don't have a camera, but my finger is up.
Or hands up or whatever. Peace signs.
Lynn,
Yes,
I have one thing. I just want to get some clarity on the last sentence under sentence number 2. Every new development and redevelopment must provide public sidewalks along the entirety of the sides of the subject property fronting on a public street. The question, I guess, is it doesn't specify whether or not you have to put that sidewalk on the private part of the property or the right of way. If it was a public street, for instance, even if it was Highway 24, and you had city sidewalk there or public sidewalk, I could see where this could become a little bit gray on where you put the sidewalk. It doesn't necessarily state the intention of what the person, we want this to be clear. And I don't know if it's always going to be clear. It's probably not, but I could see that becoming a little bit of a snag.
Jeff, would you think some language added that, basically says something to the effect of, as a first choice, this is bad language, but as a first choice within the public right of way, and if that's not available, then on the developer's property or something within an easement or?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, if it would, I guess, if I put my developer hat on for a second, I wouldn't want to like have that. If you developed a site plan, let's say, and as you're developing it, you realize at some point that you have to put, an extra 5 feet or 6 feet of sidewalk on your property that you had intended to be a setback or whatever, and then all of a sudden it changes your whole plan because of that. Like if it were going to be in the public right of way, then that would theoretically not be on the private part of your property. If there was actually an easement for that, or if there was a right of way for that. But I guess in our town, it seems like in most places, the right of way, like the pavement for the road, is the whole right of way. And there's not any extra room for a sidewalk per se without shrinking the width of the road, and which probably is impractical. And I'm not trying to go down a rabbit hole. I'm just thinking out loud.
So I was kind of thinking along the same lines as Scott, is having some language that says the public sidewalk should be in a public right of way where possible, and then if it has to be located on private property, it would be located in a public easement. I hear what you're saying about then that starts to chip away at your developable area on your property. I mean, if we didn't clarify already, we could state something in the setback section that says required public sidewalks can be located in a setback, and that way I guess it would have less of an impact because it's not impacting your building envelope, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you guys are on the right track with the language. So I think just getting something along those lines. And I think like you said, the first option, or the first thing that we would prefer, would be for it to be in the public right of way if possible. And then if not, then there would need to be easements created, et cetera. And then, to your point, you'd have to have public easements drawn up.
Matt, is that enough direction for us to go back and work on that language?
I believe so.
Hands up. Okay.
Yeah, I think that, we're definitely on the right track, that, we definitely need sidewalks, and in Jeff's point, and in discussion point, as far as easements, or at least allowing them within the setbacks, whatever Matt comes up with is the next recommendation. We need the sidewalks, and if it's allowed to be in the easements, if it doesn't front a main street, then I think it being in the easements makes it easier on a developer versus, I don't know what the standard width of a road is, if it would fit in the standard width of a road, but whatever we need sidewalks if it's a road in a subdivision, is my thoughts. So,
Well, Scott's going to work on that, Michael, and we already got hands up on that. So we'll
okay.
get back to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Page 46, anybody? We're going to start with Jeff.
No, nothing.
Eric?
I just have one clarification about the fire protection standards. I just wanted to make sure that, and I wasn't sure. I think later in the packet it talks about a wildfire plan, or is this just for fire in the subdivision itself? Is there anything that has a wildfire plan that needs to be in the subdivision plan, or in case of evacuation or anything like that?
Scott?
Just need to turn my audio on. Certainly jump in, Matt. This is a kind of a catch-all for just new subdivisions. We are about to adopt as a town the Wildfire Resiliency Code for the town of Minturn. And that'll dictate mostly building materials, exterior materials, building assembly type stuff through the building code, but will also dictate some defensible space around structures in the future. And this was, again, jump in, Matt, but I think we talked about this and not trying to duplicate the wildfire resiliency code. This was really just for subdivision design and trying to provide at least a general statement of when you come in for this new development, we want you to be thinking about fire protection service and how you're designing your development, hydrants and maneuverability and things like that.
Yeah, and I'll just piggyback. We started to get into a little bit more detail, and then pulled back because there's kind of a layer of regulations that apply in relation to fire protection, wildfire. So the town will have the wildfire regulations that it sounds like will be adopted here shortly. There's the International Fire Code that my understanding is the town has adopted. There are, in the engineering standards, there are specifications for fire hydrants and things like that. So there's kind of a variety of elements, regulations that apply when it comes to fire protection. And so we kind of dialed things back and thought just a general statement that says when you come in for a subdivision or a development, you have to demonstrate that there's adequate fire protection. And I understand that's a bit vague, but that's ultimately where we kind of ended up, is that it gives the town an option to evaluate different projects and say, you know, we think these sort of things maybe need to incorporate these sorts of things to ensure that there is adequate fire protection for your project. And I'll also note that under the access standards, which aren't that those are in the first chunk of Article 3, there is some language about emergency access, and that every property has to provide emergency access or access for emergency service providers, things like that. So that's another element that kind of comes into play here too.
Okay.
Okay. Amanda?
So on those same lines, I think I had the same question as Eric, but now listening to your response, Matt, in the future, if those additional, I guess, heightened, like I forget what you just called them, but the wildfire, like additional regulations or something, become obsolete or change or for some reason become not enforceable, do we have adequate coverage under what you have here, or do we need to add any additional language, or would we have to address that at the time? I mean, I just feel like this is super broad, and I guess I'd rather point to those other things in the language, but then also realizing that those other requirements may even morph or mature. What do we do?
I'll jump in. I think I get your point. It's a good question. This is one of those, I think, sections where it might behoove us to be broad, to be able in the future to apply it broadly. Whether those, because we're going to adopt new fire codes over time. We have the 2021 International Fire Code right now. That'll get updated in a couple of years to whatever the next iteration is. In my mind, this just allows us and the Planning Commission and the council in the future to use this standard to say, well, on top of all these other things, all these other sections of building code, residential code, fire code, wildfire resiliency code, we have this section here that says you have to comply with all these things, right? I mean, I don't know if that's an adequate response, but I think that's why we arrived at, let's make this broad so it's kind of a catch-all. Does that make sense? But I see your point. Do we need to specifically call out every subdivision development, redevelopment needs to comply with the town's adopted fire code, the town's adopted wildfire resiliency code? The only risk we run in doing that is if those things change by name or by section, we have to
Yeah.
go back in and change this section.
I guess, I mean, I just don't want it to be ever 5 years from now, somebody realizes how expensive it is to implement the fire protection standards and they come back and say, well, you said adequate fire protection. Well, we're showing you adequate. We're not going to meet these things because they've changed more from the point in time when this was put in place. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to give any leeway in protecting our community. So whatever, if you feel like if staff feels like this is fine or protects the town enough or allows us to enforce to the highest possible, but I just want to make sure that staff thinks that like this is, I don't want to use that word adequate again. But that, like that we have everything in our wheelhouse to enforce subdivisions to protect the residents of Minturn for fire. Like, I want to make sure that that's in place.
So is
going forward.
is the issue potentially the use of the word adequate? And I think we
Correct.
use the word adequate in other standards because that is kind of when you have a standard section whether it's adequate public facilities or adequate fire protection or adequate whatever, it gets overused as a word, but I understand your point. And I hesitate to use language like must meet the minimum town requirements for whatever, international fire code, or I don't know. Matt, do you have any ideas on how to address that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, my initial thought is that we need to define what adequate fire protection means, because that could be either it could be used to really kind of make somebody jump through all sorts of hoops, or it could be you're gonna have you're gonna sprinkle your front yard with your hose, and that's adequate.
That's exactly.
So, I think we need to try and define that. And Scott, to your point, I know I've seen codes where there's an adequate public facilities section, which means somebody has to demonstrate that there's adequate water, sewer, et cetera, for their project. So I think we probably need to take a stab at that and defining what adequate means. And it could mean you have to demonstrate, the minimum is demonstrating compliance with all the various fire-related regulations that the town may have. And then maybe it's the town through the review process has the option of kind of layering on top of that or whatever. I don't know. That's just kind of off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I like that suggestion, and I think part of that would be yes, you have to demonstrate compliance with the town's multiple requirements, and provide evidence of essentially fire district sign off on the design of the project.
That would be
It's kind of
good.
a two-tiered at the base with the application coming in, and when we do our completeness review, they've provided some evidence through the design of their project, through the narrative, the written description of what they're trying to build or what they're subdividing, that they've addressed these standards that already exist elsewhere in the code or in the building code. And the second component of that is that they've provided evidence in writing from the fire district or other agencies, wildland fire review, that they've gotten pre-approval from them or something like that.
That seems more comprehensive.
Yeah. I just don't want us to get down the road where somebody says, well, it's adequate. Well, it's really not, because all of these things have changed. And now we've had, this, I feel like we need more.
Well, to Scott's point, Amanda, I think that the town staff is not, that they don't have the bandwidth
Nope.
to keep up with the how dynamic that is changing, but the fire district does. That's their job.
Yes,
So
I
the
totally agree.
people and the structured fire people and all of those, everything that's changing and constantly changing in that world will just change. And then when a plan comes through, it's
Yes.
going to be viewed by them with those eyes in that day, So I think
Yes.
that's pretty good.
Okay, Amanda, is that all?
That was it for me on that page. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael?
Yeah, so I wish I had a picture. I like everybody's live feed pictures, but I didn't know I didn't have a camera until about an hour ago. That being said, I think the discussion so far has made great progress, with Amanda and Matt and Jeff's recommendations. And I think, as far as defining it, something to also take into consideration is, technically there could be different variables as well regarding in what zone you're in. Just that's my only input on that.
You
Thank you,
mean
Michael.
that the fire protection it also has to be reflective of what your use by rights are. So like if you're mixed use and then you have to hit what's required for commercial versus what's just required for maybe residential. Is that what you're alluding to?
Well,
Like you
yeah, I
go
was
to what's
leading
actually
more-
being the highest, like the highest capacity or the highest fire protection based on the use by rights, regardless if that use is, I'm just trying to think out loud.
The
I,
fire department takes care of that.
I think that I was more leaning to like the different zone districts in town as to areas that potentially, could have more issues than others, sort of along those lines, as well as, what you said possibly. We just want to make sure that, it's an important piece of the code. And I know that, everybody's had strong opinions on, fire protection, especially on new subdivisions and land with fire hydrants. And I think that the discussion and, your suggestions, Matt's suggestions, Jeff's suggestions, Scott's suggestions, I think we're all going in the right direction. And, and I think so far Matt has good direction, and we'll just see how it comes back.
Thank you, Michael.
Can I ask another question on that?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, and this is for Matt and staff. So if somebody comes in with a subdivision, the subdivision is mixed use, would the fire protection have to go to the ultimate, which is commercial? Or because they're only proposing building out residential at first, would it be residential fire protection, which is a different standard? Because I feel like they should build the fire protection for the max of what they're going to be doing, commercial.
Okay. Can everybody hold on a minute? Daryl would like to respond.
Amanda, that's exactly what the fire department does. They hold it to the maximum use of the zone.
Thank you.
In just commercial, residential, and it's a mixed use, the standards are gonna be to the highest possible.
Staff, do you agree with that? Or do
I
we-
think my knowledge of building and fire code and how the fire district and the building official look at that is consistent with what Daryl's talking about. If you've got a mixed use building and it's got commercial components, it needs to comply with the fire code commercial standards. Jeff, do you agree with that, or is there a separation between? Okay, you're agreeing with that too?
I do.
Okay.
Go
And
back.
if it's a subdivision and we're talking about multiple parcels, one of them has commercial uses, others are just straight up residential. I think that starts looking more like, from a neighborhood protection standpoint, the design of the neighborhood, the design of the fire protection facilities, hydrants, adequate turnarounds for and accessibility for fire trucks and things like that. Minimum distances or max, I would say minimum distances from the street to a structure, especially for commercial. That's where the fire district usually has comments because their ladder trucks have to have certain layback for ladders and things like that. A lot of those fire standards dictate the design of subdivisions. I don't know if we'll ever get there with the remaining parcels of land that we have from a kind of a mixed use neighborhood design standpoint. But I think that's a really good point, Amanda. What standard are we designing to? There's two components. I think it's the overall layout of the subdivision and components that are requirements that the fire district's going to want to see: minimum turning radius for their trucks, distances between fire hydrants relative to the development. And then there's the building design aspects and how they have access to those, how they're constructed, and to Jeff and Daryl's points, if it's commercial, they need to design to a commercial standard.
Daryl, do you have anything else?
No, but I do have something on that page.
That's what I mean. Page
Oh.
46. It's your turn.
At the very top, and this is probably for Scott or Matt. We are eliminating the width, the 5-foot width. Is there a standard that we're going to have, or what?
Yeah, I can respond to that. So, the reason we are suggesting that change is the Town of Minturn's engineering standards, which are Appendix C in the municipal code. There is a minimum width in those engineering standards that is 5 feet. And then there's other specifications, I think, like, the type of concrete or rebar. I mean, I'm not an expert on all that stuff, but kind of the engineering specifications for how you design and construct the sidewalks. And our thinking was, rather than try and integrate those existing engineering standards into here, we would just refer to the engineering standards and specifications that the town already has. And I think at some level, there's some hope that in the future, maybe the town will pull together a public works manual and all those sorts of standards, like how wide sidewalks have to be, things like that, will be spelled out in there.
Okay.
If that made sense.
Yep, that explains it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That it?
That's it.
I have nothing. Page 47. We're going to start with Jeff.
I don't want to get into the weeds too far here either, but the above ground utilities. Obviously, the elephant in the room has been the power line going through town for a while. And the statement that the determination under 2B, the determination to locate a utility facility above ground must be based on a recommendation by and the requirements of the utility provider, which would be, in this case, Excel, and approved by the town. So I guess first question on that statement is, how enforceable is that from our standpoint to a utility like Excel? Because I guess, for a lack of a better way of putting it, if we go backward, we're not talking about a land use application, so I think I can speak freely about this. And Scott, tell me if I need to shut up. But I feel like when we talked about, the burying the line versus not burying the line and the reasons why, I don't ever recall the fact that it's in a geohazard zone being discussed. And the fact is that the entire way, once you get into this valley and you start running from one end of town to the other, you're in a rockfall zone. And giant boulders that are sitting on the railroad tracks right now behind the Enclave when Lions Head broke apart is a real true fact. And I'm no expert, but you don't need to be to see the giant sized rocks that have come down over the years. So the question is, if we tried to say to a utility provider, you can't put anything above ground because you can't really build it to withstand a boulder that size. So it needs to be buried for those reasons. Is this statement the kind of statement that we could use to our advantage over utility? And if so, is it really truly enforceable?
Matt, I'm going to want you to respond, but I think my initial reaction, Jeff, is it might be apples and oranges. This is supposed to apply to new subdivisions, and what we're talking about, or what you're talking about, is a public utility and a major line project.
Yeah.
Which kind of finds itself in a different category that's covered under our 1041 regs.
Yep, got it.
So I think this is intended for smaller projects and subdivisions.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Scott. So this language came from the Colorado Model Land Use Code. And I agree with Scott that I think the intent of this language is to say if you're doing a new subdivision and you're going to run overhead power lines to your subdivision, and Excel says, whoa, like there's an avalanche chute you're trying to build your lines through, that's where I think this would come into play. And if you want to do that, if Excel says, okay, you can have your overhead lines, but you have to build a barrier around the poles to make sure they don't get blasted when an avalanche comes down, something like that. I don't know that this is intended to apply to like major transmission lines, and maybe if we need to clarify that, because it does say, it applies to subdivision, development, redevelopment, and or use of land. And I guess somebody could say, well, use of land is a transmission line. So we might need to clarify that.
All right. Sorry to throw that in there.
No, I think, again, I think these clarifications are helpful.
Yeah, extremely helpful, because once this goes live, and we have to interpret and enforce it if it's got holes in it. So I think it's a great question, and it sounds like we can clarify that language.
Okay.
Okay, next we have Eric.
I don't have anything on this page.
Next we have Amanda.
So continuing the conversation that Jeff asked, that we're going to get additional clarification, could we also add, so some like subdivisions would have what they call like a utility facility or like a larger transmission box depending on the size. And the way I was looking at it is that they could potentially put that above ground if approved. That's the way I was thinking that this applied for, like utilities. So like if it's a larger subdivision, instead of like if you're going from Aspen to Snowmass, there's like transmission hubs throughout that go off to Snowmass, go off to that. So that's just what I was interpreting this. So if we could just get clarification on exactly what that utility facility is, if it's those transmission hubs or if it's something totally different. I don't have anything else on this page.
Anybody have any response to that? No? Okay. Next we have Michael, page 47.
Yeah, I was just joining the conversation, of clarification, and the main thing as far as clarification, at our town rec meeting yesterday, at one point somebody had brought up potential housing on the east side of the river. I think the main elephant in the room is a completely separate subject in that regard. But I think as far as subdivisions go, if something were to pop up down the line over in the public works area, I think we would want Yeah, buried. Buried is always better. That's all I got.
Thanks, Michael. Daryl?
Nope, nothing.
Lynn has nothing, but may have a raise of hands on clarifying.
Got it.
Mine's
Got
up.
it? Okay, we got it, Madison. Page 48. Jeff?
No.
Eric?
Nope.
Amanda?
Nope.
Michael?
Nope.
Daryl?
Nope.
Lynn? No. Page 49. Jeff?
No.
Eric?
I had a little question on the water bodies, where it says BI, the town encourages subdivisions and developments adjacent to water bodies to conform with the Eagle River watershed plan and designed to protect riparian areas. Should there be a standard for setbacks? Or are we just, whose discretion is that? I guess that's my question. Did we talk about setbacks at some point? I feel like that's been a conversation we've had before.
So the town's minimum setbacks for live stream would still apply. And the Eagle River watershed plan is a obscure plan that I don't think most people have ever seen. It's I think geared towards protection of the town's water sources, and has I think it's been a while since I looked at it, but it exists. And so Madison or Matt, do you have anything else to add to that? I think the live stream setbacks are not going away. And this is referencing a specific plan that the town adopted years ago.
Yeah, the other piece so this is one of the standards under Appendix B right now. So a lot of these site planning standards come from Appendix B. And one of the challenges we encountered with some of those standards is the way they're worded is a little confusing. Sometimes it was impossible to know what they were trying to get at. So we tried to adhere to, kind of hold on to the standard that was in the Appendix B today and then incorporate that here. But you can see there's a lot of red line here. So we tried to modify that to hopefully make it read a little better and hopefully make more sense when it applies. To Scott's point, I would agree that there is a live stream setback that would apply anytime you're adjacent to the Eagle River and other water bodies in Minturn.
Does that apply to riparian areas too? Or do we have anything setbacks for that, or can we just dig right in there? Or
I think that's a question you'd have to answer, Scott, but I don't know if live stream setback, if there's any setback required from riparian areas. It's more so from the high water mark.
Correct. So we may want to, Matt and Madison, define water bodies in context to this provision. But I don't know if we want to delve into. I've tried to not mess at all with the live stream setback section of our existing code. I think you bring up a really good point though, Eric. Because within that code section for live stream setback, the intent is to protect the riparian area. I can't remember if we have a definition for riparian area, but as we go through the definition section of the code, perhaps that's another thing that we can look at as defining water bodies. Anyway,
okay.
I don't know. What does everybody else think? I tried not to mess with the live stream setback section at this point. Doesn't mean we can't.
Well, I think getting at too is what if it's a designated wetland, or what if it's designated as a fen? To Daryl knows the fens.
And
So
fan of fen.
wetlands are protected under, I mean, federal regulations, like if you mess with wetlands, you have to deal with the Army Corps of Engineers. I do think if there isn't a definition of riparian areas in the code already, we need to include that. I mean, I wouldn't be able to tell you what that means. I mean, this says that projects need to be designed to protect riparian areas, so I think it's important to clarify what those are. But in regards to the setback, again, I mean, my understanding, the live stream setback right now is a distance measured from the high water mark. It doesn't necessarily say if you have riparian areas that extend beyond the high water mark, you can't just go bulldoze those. So
Well,
I don't know.
so
maybe
the
I'm
way our
wrong.
code is written today is that so from the ordinary high water mark, 30 feet back or 50 feet in the case of Game Creek. I think it's Game Creek. You are not allowed to landscape anything within that 30 feet. So we treat that as the riparian area. So now if you have additional beyond that, you can disturb that because that falls outside of the setback. But for the majority of town, it's that 30 feet that, yeah, you can't go bulldoze, you can't go dig it up. Now there's a sewer line that runs back there that DRWSD has to have access to, so they may dig it up, but they have to put it back to its natural state. So there is some protection for that area, but I don't believe we have any setback from the riparian because the 30-foot live stream setback acts as the riparian area.
To Matt's point about pulling language from Appendix B into this section of the new code, I certainly didn't feel like we could do away with any reference to the Eagle River watershed plan. But as I mentioned, it is obscure. I was just looking for it on the town's website. It doesn't exist on the website. I think it's somewhere in our files, Madison. I've never used it. I've never heard it invoked in any other process in town.
I know we've looked at the map because the map is Appendix A, but I don't know about the actual plan.
Right. So this kind of feels like something we probably need to circle back to. If there's other sections of this new code that we're either really not going to mess with right now, but we can put on a list of projects for the planning department in 2027, that'd be a good one to circle back to, because as far as I understand, I think it's an adopted plan. I don't know if anyone knows about it or what it's ever been used for. I think it was for watershed protection.
I think we had to adopt it when we got that grant to clean up the river.
Okay.
That's what I was going to say.
Thank you. So it might be an opportunity to circle back to that. I think we're still, I believe, are we going to work on floodplain mapping in the future? Is Jeff Spinell going to work on that, or are we?
I don't think that's high on his priority list, but I think it's on the list.
Okay. My point is, if we want to circle back to live stream setbacks, riparian areas, this watershed protection plan, maybe that's something we can put on a priority list. We just didn't want to get rid of the language and take it upon ourselves to erase this from our code.
Amanda.
I'd like to circle back on it.
Okay. Michael.
Yeah, circling back sounds good.
Daryl?
I agree to circle back on it, but I think you might check with Eagle River Water and Sand. They did a lot of work on this Eagle River watershed plan when they were having to do something up in Camp Hale, and there was a lot of riparian area up there that they were having to address, as well as over by heading towards Steamboat. There was a watershed over there that they were wanting to put a reservoir, and they ran into the fin problem. So check with Eagle River Water and Sand. They've done a lot of work on it.
I have nothing there, but I have a question on B, topography number 3, setbacks may be increased for lots that slope greater than 30%. Can I have some explanation, clarification on that? Please.
Yeah, so that was language we are recommending be deleted. Because it's again, this is an existing provision from Appendix B, and it was very ambiguous as to who decides what setbacks get increased to and what that may be, what increase that would be. There's just no criteria for determining what changes the setback, what those changes to setbacks would be. Does that help?
Well, I guess why would a greater slope require that?
Good question. That's, I think, one of the reasons why we're suggesting getting rid of that language.
I mean, you don't know of any reason.
Well, I think the intent may have been, if you're developing on a steep slope, maybe the increased setback allows for additional retainage or other modifications around the structure that otherwise on a flatter slope you wouldn't need. But I agree with Matt. I think that was problematic for all of us when we were doing this. If there's standards that go along with that or some rationale as to why, and then a process for who decides and what metrics the planning commission or staff or somebody's going to use to increase the setback on someone and further restrict their building envelope, essentially, we can do that. But the other changes that we've made to this section, I think, clarify what the intent is, of how important it is to be sensitive designing on a slope.
Okay. So with that, I need a hands up on circling back to Eric's question, correct?
Correct.
I see fingers wiggling over there. That's Jeff.
My fingers are
You got it,
correct.
Madison. Page 50. Jeff,
I do not have anything on page 50.
Eric,
I don't have anything on 50.
Amanda,
I just want to make sure. So like, no, nothing.
Michael,
I have nothing on 50.
Daryl,
Nope, nothing.
neither do I. Page 51.
And quickly, Lynn, if I could interrupt,
Yes.
something I forgot to mention when I provided the intro was some of these standards, like the fire protection standard section and things like that, those we're trying to strike a balance here between getting we could spend a year or more doing really detailed subdivision development standards. So what we're trying to do is develop and incorporate standards that are lacking from the existing code where we thought it was appropriate and kind of we're following the code assessment that we did at the get-go of this whole effort. But I think staff has noted that there's probably a need at some point in the near future. And I don't want to speak on behalf of Scott Madison, but at some point down the road, there'd probably be a need to revisit some of these standards and maybe elaborate or expand on some of these. So some of these standards are kind of a starting point that hopefully at some point in the near future, if the town thinks it's necessary, they can be built upon. So I apologize for not noting that earlier on.
And Matt, I'll just tag on without belaboring it too much. As I think when we started, we thought we weren't going to touch Appendix B, which is the design standards for everything outside of the 100 block. But as we got into this and started thinking about, well, if we're not going to have character errors anymore, but yet Appendix B, a large portion of it is geared towards specific character areas, those effectively become obsolete, and we didn't want to do that either. So we wanted to try to carry over design standards, clean them up as best we could, make them applicable, as Matt said earlier, to multiple zone districts, right? And that leads us to what he just said, which is we need to revisit the design standards for everything outside the 100 block at some future date. This gets us to a better place, though, and doesn't throw out all the design standards that we've relied on before. Does that make sense?
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Did you have anything else on 50? Mandy, you were looking it over to make sure.
Nope,
No.
I'm good.
Okay, Michael,
No.
Daryl,
No,
and I have nothing.
So I guess the only question I did have, I'm sorry, was on solar orientation. So I feel like somewhere else in the chapter 16, we stated that solar panels had to be like lower than 12 feet. Like we had some commentary back that, but this won't affect, this is orientation of the solar. It wouldn't affect or be in conflict with those other decisions that we previously made.
Correct. This is really orientation of a building and or sidewalks or driveways to take advantage of solar,
Yep.
melting the snow and passive solar in windows and things like that.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. I just wanted to make sure, get it on record.
All right, page 51, Jeff.
My only question is on the off-street parking where under A, it says for all properties, parking must be located to the side and or to the rear. Does that, I mean, wouldn't that mean like, I don't know, I guess, why not, if you have a house with a driveway in front of your house, you're parking in front of your house? So what am I missing? Why are we saying that you have to park on the side of the house or the rear of the house?
So this was a standard, I believe it was applicable in the Old Town character area. I could be wrong about that though, but this was a standard we tried to incorporate and make a townwide standard. And the thought was that if your property fronts on Main Street, that if you have an off-street parking area, that needs to be tucked to the side or behind the building. I hear what you're saying about single-family homes, and if it was appropriate, we could include an exception for that. But I think there's places in town where the intent is to create sort of a pedestrian-oriented environment, and having parking fronting on Main Street, from my perspective, is sort of counter to that desired character.
Yeah, I mean, I see where that applies on Pine Street or maybe over on Taylor Street, but on Main Street, there's a lot of homes on Main Street, and every one of them has their parking in front of their houses pretty much. So I don't think we want to make a statement that creates a nonconformity first and foremost, and maybe we just have to address it per zone, or I don't know. It just stood out to me as like a problem.
Matt, do you think, based on your statement, I think you're right. It was perhaps specific to the Old Town commercial area. And if this is a standard that applies to commercial development where there's a parking lot or something, maybe that's what this is trying to get at. Because the next one says off-street parking areas must be screened in accordance with another section, which gets to kind of screening of larger parking areas.
Correct.
Do we want to try to clarify that?
Yeah. And so I think there are a couple different ways to approach this. It could be an overall exception for single family homes, or other types of kind of smaller residential projects that don't necessitate large parking areas, that those can be in front, those are allowed to be in front of buildings. We could also say that this only applies to commercial or mixed use developments. So there's, or we could, I mean, we could also say that it only applies if you have over a certain number of parking spaces in your parking area. So say the threshold is 3 or more, or something like that. But yeah, I think to that point, there's probably some clarity that needs to be included in here. The other piece to this too is if there are areas in town where the intent is to really not have parking along Main Street, like off-street parking areas, let me clarify, and along Main Street, then maybe we need to try and tailor or clarify that this applies to certain zone districts. So I know I just threw out a handful of options, but I think some direction would be very helpful on how maybe we need to clean this up or modify it.
Thank you, Jeff. Eric,
I don't have anything on this page.
Amanda.
I don't have anything else on this page, but do we need to provide direction?
Well, we will when we get to the end of the page.
Okay.
Michael?
In regards to the parking, what Jeff was talking about, I understand that, you know, the intent for sure is on Main Street, you know, we want sidewalks and people walking down them and this and that, you know, but then you also get into certain zone districts, like, for example, like Shop and Hop that's, you know, accessed and technically probably has a parking spot or two, quote, in the front. Then you have the car wash and the wing place that has substantial parking, you know, on, you know, that comes in from the front that potentially, you know, that's a good sized lot, and say they, you know, wanted to go, you know, in from the front down into an underground parking structure, just for an example. So I think that, you know, one way to look at it is potentially, I guess you could, you know, I guess the existing stuff is legal non-conforming, and for, you know, future thought, you know, you could potentially maximize the width access, you know, where there's bigger properties or something along those lines. But I think that, you know, just the wing place, you know, for example, you know, they've got 8 spots that, you know, don't really they pull in from the front and then they park in the parking spots. And I don't know whether that constitutes, you know, coming in from Main Street or not, but, you know, that's definitely parking like right there that, you know, me, I'm always looking for parking in the future. And I don't think that, I think that that's something that, you know, maybe you ponder, Matt, and think of future thoughts in the future.
Matt, real quick, I think we can clean this language up, and I think we are looking for direction, but this, like other standards, are provided a waiver option. Is that not true? If
You
someone
would
came
be
to
able
us
to
and
get a
said-
waiver. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so if they came to us and said, you know, existing conditions are, we already have parking coming off of Main Street, and for us to redevelop this property, we really don't have any better options. And, you know, go through a process where the planning commission can decide whether or not that makes sense. But I do think there's room for some clarity on this.
Okay, Daryl?
Scott, yes, we definitely have to address this. From the 200 block to the 900 block, there is several. It's more of the norm than the exception. Also up at our end, at the 1700 block, technically our little cul-de-sac is called Main Street. All 5 of us are front approached. And some of them, well, for example, my driveway can hold 6 cars, not just 2. So yeah, we need to address this a lot more.
I'm next, and
Just
my,
curious though, I don't mean to belabor this, but I'm curious, is that a privately maintained road that is just called Main Street, or is it a public right of way?
It's a private road named Main Street.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
okay, B, my question was, will somebody please give me an example of off-street parking areas that must be screened in with accordance with?
So this the screening section is one of the sections we're still working on. And the idea with screening is if you have an off-street parking area, and again, that there would be a threshold of how many parking spaces are in that parking area, and this would apply to surface parking lots. The idea is to kind of try and camouflage that parking area with landscaping or a sort of a decorative wall. There's a variety of ways you can approach screening, but that the intent is that if there's a parking area, again, that's over a certain number of spaces, I think the initial thought was maybe 10 or more spaces, that then you would have to screen your parking area so that there's not just this kind of sea of asphalt adjacent to a public street.
Is there any example of that in Minturn? Anybody can think of?
Next to between the saloon and the turntable.
On the east side?
Well, there's a new screened wall that they built. When you pull into the turntable, if you just made a right-hand turn instead of going into the municipal lot, and you made a turn towards the turntable and then made another 90-degree turn into those parking spaces, facing towards the saloon, there's a big screened wall right there.
Fence.
Ah,
So when you're on that road going up to the Minturn North, in the Taylor Street, you're not looking at the people parking there. You're looking at a screened wall.
Jeff, isn't that a fence, a 4-foot or 5-foot fence?
Correct. But
is that the one that fences off the Mexican Bar and Grill side?
Yes.
On the north side? Is that
Yeah.
what
Yeah, but that's technically considered screening.
I got you. So then with all this conversation and the suggestions made, is everybody okay taking this to the next page? Jeff's saying yes. Eric's saying yes. Amanda?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Next, page 52. Does anybody have anything?
No.
Eric?
Nope. I learned what a dormer is, but no.
I bet that's in our definitions. Is it?
No, but it can be.
Okay. Amanda?
No.
Michael?
No.
Daryl?
Nope.
Lynn, no. Page 53. Jeff?
No.
No for Eric.
Amanda?
No.
Michael?
No.
Daryl?
Nope.
Lynn, no. Page 54.
No.
No.
Eric? Amanda?
So the use of this is similar to another question. The use of awnings, porticos, and or building entry features is encouraged for non-residential and mixed-use buildings. We previously had conversation on what constitutes an awning, and I just wanted to confirm with staff that this statement doesn't conflict with what we previously discussed. That awnings aren't I think we discussed like the solid roof is not considered an awning, or maybe vice versa. But I just wanted to make sure that we're not, or if we needed to add a definition.
I think we had no post as well, Amanda.
Yeah, we had some things that were like specific in this space.
So was that not relative to awnings and setbacks? It didn't have anything to do with the design of a house. If you design your house or your building to have awnings and porticos, you can certainly have posts and they can be design elements. But that discussion was about whether or not it'd be in a setback.
Correct, but this is saying it's now encouraged, but it's still also. I just want to make sure we're not creating conflict between what we previously discussed and this, since it's now encouraged with this statement.
So
Go ahead,
Scott. What I was going to say, so this comes from, as noted in the margin, it's a Grouse Creek Character Area Guideline. And Appendix B has standards and guidelines, and standards are mandatory and guidelines are kind of, we encourage these things, but if you don't do it, there's nothing we can do about it, sort of thing. So that's where this came from, and we wanted to clarify that this applied to non-residential and mixed-use buildings. In terms of a definition of awning, that certainly is something that needs to be defined if it's not already. And it'll likely say something like an awning is a structure that's covered with canvas or something like that, and is supported solely by the building it's attached to, things like that. And in addition to that, we did talk I think in a fair amount of detail about awnings encroaching into setbacks. And I don't recall off the top of my head where we landed with that, but those restrictions would still apply to how far your awning could potentially encroach into a required setback area.
Okay.
The only thing I'll add to this whole discussion, and it really applies to this whole section, as we define these things, I think there's a lot of opportunity for graphics that help communicate what it is we're talking about. What is an awning? What's the benefit of an awning or a portico or some entry feature on a building, and be able to illustrate that in a new illustration. So we're, in both senses, we're really defining what we're talking about.
Okay. Just want to make sure it's like we're not, again, that staff thinks that we're using the word is encouraged, and I just want to make sure that we're not adding conflict with other previously discussed sections.
I think what Jeff said and stated, Amanda, I think that what he said, as long as, basically you can build what you want as long as you're not in the setbacks. But when we definitely had a discussion in regards to, nothing, no poster stuff going down in the setbacks, that Matt can look back and see what we came up with on that. But I think that we all agree that the discussion that we already had on that hopefully stands in that regard.
Yep. I'm only bringing this up because, and I know we're not supposed to reference our places, but I live in a lovely house that has a quite large awning that is definitely in the setback because our house entrance is on the side of the street, not the front. So I'm just bringing this up because I don't want there to be conflicts that we're creating in code. So we're encouraging them, but then we're at the same point saying not. So that's it.
Madison, call code enforcement. Have Kevin go by the Mears house tomorrow.
Can't knock me down. It's not with a post.
I think I definitely hear what you're saying. And if we need to clarify that it's encouraged, so long as it doesn't, violate
Pose. I mean, it doesn't have to say that. Just as long as staff is comfortable that we're not creating conflicts within the code. So just do just as long as we're not creating any conflicts.
Michael, do you have anything else on page 54?
No, thank you.
Carol?
No.
I have a request because I know what these things are, but mullions, muttons, and fenestration, I learned the definitions from Greg Sparhawk before he left. But I'd like to I looked them up in Webster's dictionary, and I couldn't find the definitions. So if we could possibly have some kind of thing in that for
We
people.
definitely will.
Okay.
Yep.
Other than that, I have nothing. And you're okay with your conversation with Amanda? The way it is? Do we need to take a hand vote or are we okay?
I think we're fine.
Okay. Page 55. Jeff,
Nothing.
Eric,
Anything?
Amanda,
Nothing.
Michael,
Nothing.
Nope,
Carol.
nope.
I have a question and I don't know or where I read this or heard it. But under building materials, did I hear somewhere that the state code will be changing from wood siding to where it has to be a wood siding look that is not fire appropriate, that is fire appropriate or possibly like a hardy board,
Non-combustible.
non-combustible, thank you.
The new wildfire resiliency code that either the state's going to mandate for us or that we can adopt on our own, we've chosen to adopt our own. It will have for new development and major redevelopment of existing structures, major residing and things, requirements for non-combustible materials.
Okay. So at that point, this will get changed. Because this just says wood siding. It doesn't describe, explain it.
Does it make provisions for materials that look like wood siding?
Yes.
I think it used to.
Use of wood siding.
Of modern materials that mimic the natural.
Yeah, under bullet point C, it says that.
Oh, under bullet point C. Okay, I'm sorry. I was looking at B.
Yeah, mimic natural.
Okay, so we're okay there. Okay, thank you.
Well, to your point, Lynn, I may want to go look at the code that we're about to adopt for wildfire resiliency and make sure that, I mean, wood siding in this part of our code might not make any sense anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree, Scott. I mean, if we're saying wood siding's encouraged and then the wildfire standards are saying don't use wood siding, it's
Right.
a little contradictory.
Yep.
Again, this was an existing guideline that came out of Appendix B. So we tried our best to hold on to those the best we could. And so some of those, if they seem like they don't make sense anymore, I don't know that there's any reason they can't be removed or further modified.
Thank you. Hands up,
Hands up.
hands up. Okay, page 56. Does anybody have anything?
I don't.
We're going to start with Jeff.
I just had a question about the makerspace zone district, where it talks about historical architectural styles are discouraged. I guess if I know this is a dumb thing to say, but because I certainly would never hope this, but if that whole space got redeveloped, why would we discourage making it look historical?
If it's uniform, right? If it's in uniformity, that's what I was going to say too.
So
Right.
when we were going through the adoption of chapter 19, the historic preservation, and we had a bunch of presentations from History Colorado and things like that. They explained to us at the time that you really shouldn't try and recreate historic structures because then it starts to feel like Main Street on Disneyland. You can tell that there's just something off, even if it looks historic. You know it's not because we have different building practices, we have different building materials, etc. So that's often why we don't encourage, sorry, excuse me. That's often why we don't encourage the rebuilding of historic structures, even if you have something to mimic them off of, and instead try and pay homage to them in other ways from a historic preservation point of view as somebody who administers that chapter.
And I think this language came from Grouse Creek. So the thinking was, like you're saying, Jeff, the existing development there, the existing style wouldn't mesh too well with historic building
Right.
or design, right? But if the whole thing were to be redeveloped, I see your point. I also think Madison's correct. Recreation of historic architecture styles is generally discouraged in historic districts, at least. Um, I don't know. It's up to you guys. I mean, if we were again trying to pull these over and make them kind of fit the new zone districts, um,
Yeah, I mean, I get the intent and I understand Madison's logic there, and there's obviously was a lot of discussion about it. I guess it still seems a little subjective. So, um, I guess putting it in writing that it's discouraged versus not saying anything at all. I guess I'm on the fence about that of why do we, if we all are, if the consensus is certainly along the lines of the Historic Preservation Committee to say we don't, God forbid the place ever burned down or a developer came in and just wanted to scrape everything and start over. I don't know. And if they said, looking at old historic pictures of the old, 150 years ago and said, I want to start building some buildings that are similar, but not necessarily trying to make it look like Disneyland. I just wonder why, like, a lot of times architects are from out of state and they just pull up our code and they start digging into it and they have no frame of reference of what our town is, feels like, whatever. They're just in Dallas, let's say, or whatever, and they're just that's square one for them as well. Let's look at the code and see what the code says, and it says nope, it's discouraged. So they just immediately don't go down the road of looking at historical structures of Minturn to just start designing buildings. And I just don't know if that's correct, necessarily the right direction.
So one way this language could be tweaked could be something like use of historic architectural styles that would appear inauthentic or something like that, that using architectural styles, historic architectural styles that make it look like Disneyland. That's not what we're trying to do. But if you can figure out a way to do it in an authentic way, which I understand is very subjective, then maybe that allows that flexibility. Again, this is a guideline from the Grouse Creek character area section in Appendix B that we tried to carry forward. But so this isn't mandatory, but I hear the point that if it says discourage, somebody might pick that up and say, oh, well, I can't do that.
Yeah.
So
could you marry that with a statement if you want to do away with discouraging, but make reference to historic recreation is not the goal. However, drawing upon existing designs and existing materials and architectural detailing elsewhere in town is encouraged. Because who knows what happens in the future, right?
Yeah, and we do, previous pages, we talk about how the purpose and intent up above, a couple pages ahead was that the design standards for buildings and redevelopment will enhance the existing character and scale of Minturn, an old mining and railroad community. So, on one hand, we're saying we want to pay homage to our history and be in keeping with that. And then, here we're saying we want to discourage it. So I don't particularly like the discourage statement myself.
Amanda?
I feel like we should just remove the entire statement, but that's just my own gut. Like, I mean, historic is a point in time. And so 10 years from now, something new could be discouraged. 20 years from now, something new, different could be discouraged because of that, rolling historic element. So I don't know where it gets us. the statement. I hear the Disney World, but I feel like that's part of like design review already built in. And I totally agree because I can't stand Breckenridge where you have all the fake facade and then boxes behind it, but that's just me. So that's my vote. I think our other DRB stuff drives.
Michael?
We're talking about makerspace currently, and then there might be other questions on the rest of the page, correct?
Yes, it's your turn.
Okay, as far as makerspace goes, I, discouraged, I would say approved, but with Amanda's comment, I think it's best just to, I believe that at the end of this, we can have a consensus vote as to whether we think we should leave that paragraph or just remove it. Possibly, it would be my recommendation. And then at the bottom, the last subsection 3, I believe is what it means. It talks about building heights and as necessary. And I looked at that and I had different thoughts on that because I know we're still kicking heights around, but I do understand as necessary. So I'm okay with as necessary.
Daryl?
I agree with Amanda. I would like to eliminate that whole paragraph about historical architectural styles. No need to just throw it in there if there's going to be a lot of confusion about it. Because, history changes and who knows what the style is going to be in, like she said, 20 years from now.
And to be quite frank, for myself, if I were to have a disaster at my house and I wanted to rebuild, I probably may want to make it, I don't know, small Victorian or a small prairie style, something that fits in like Jeff's sister's house. Yours, is that prairie style, Jeff, with the pillars in front?
You're asking the wrong guy. It's just like,
It's craftsman. It's craftsman style.
Craftsman style.
Yeah.
It's definitely not Disney style.
No, it's not Disney style. And my house is considered a farm Victorian. It's just very old fashioned. I might want to edge it up a little bit. So Jeff, do you agree with just getting rid of the whole paragraph?
Yeah.
Okay, so do I. Hands up. Everybody.
My hands up,
Thank you for that direction. If Amanda hadn't suggested that, I think I was going to suggest that. And this might be one of those, if we're going to revisit the design standards for the whole town at some point in a more comprehensive manner, we might spend some time in the makerspace and come up with a set of standards that really give a design direction for that area for redevelopment in the future. We just didn't see that we had time to do that now. So great discussion. Thanks for the direction.
Page 57. Jeff?
No, I don't have anything there.
Eric?
No.
Amanda?
The mixed use one. I'm just trying to make sure. No.
Michael?
No.
Daryl?
Nope.
Lynn? No. Thank you.
Matt, just for our purpose, I see another bullet point that says natural materials such as wood.
Oh, yeah, it's in here a couple of times.
Yeah, so I think we need to scrub this thoroughly to make sure if we have references to wood, it is modified to comply with our wildfire resiliency stuff. I think I totally missed that when we went through it last
Well,
week.
yeah, so that under Roman numeral 5B, that is a modified version of the building materials standards for the 100 block. So that's something to note too, that if we need to change that specific provision in the 100 block. But I agree. I don't think we should be encouraging wood if the wildfire code is going to say don't use wood. It's really
It stinks.
going to cause problems. Yeah.
Hardy board and similar products come in very wood-like appearances now, which is great. but it kind of stinks that we can't use real wood anymore.
Well, but how far does that get taken then with homes like in Minturn North, which have all those wood sidings?
They have already been built.
No, I know, but I mean, in the future, it would affect that too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
That's
if they
what I
were to
wanted to-
re-side or right.
I wouldn't be surprised if you see more, given this, you see more building treatments, like treated wood to be fire resistant so that you can still use wood elements on your house. I could see that becoming more and more of a niche market in the future, because of this, especially in the West.
I think what you're saying there, Jeff, is way back when there was a spray-on product when there was shakes, and the Class C, you could bring it up to a Class B spray-on, and I would think that spray-on, I like wood, and I think there's definitely probably someone currently working on bringing up a spray-on to a Class A for sure.
Right.
Daryl has a comment also.
Going along that exact lines, they are coming up with stuff that I didn't realize about the spray on, but the materials that are wood looking, but they're non-combustible, especially in lattice. A lot of people put lattice on their decks, around their decks, and all that kind of stuff. But there is a lot of new stuff coming in. Yes.
Okay. I would like to call for a 5-minute break. Is everybody okay with that?
That'd be fantastic.
Thanks.
Right.
Hi, is everybody back?
And Mike.
Yes.
Jeff. Yoo-hoo. Jeff's not back.
Can I ask Scott a question?
Scott, Daryl has a question for you. Out of this.
It's not in reference to anything we have before us. Does the town have any deal where if someone wants to replace a toilet to a very water efficient one, like a 0.8 flow toilet, can the town reimburse them, say for $100 or $50 or something like that, to work for conservation reasons?
I don't know that the town does. Madison, jump in anytime, but yeah, I know Eagle River Water and Sand District may have stuff for that, but I don't think the town does.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, the town does not.
Pardon?
As far as I'm aware, the town does not have provisions to reimburse people for.
And on new buildings, is that automatic?
I have no clue what the building code requires in regards to toilet flow. So if
But with water,
if building code requires it, then yes. If it does not, then no.
So,
Daryl, we could give you a gold star.
so Daryl, did you get notice that you had a leaky toilet? Because I got notice that I had a leaky toilet, which I knew was leaky from Eagle Water. And then I had to replace my toilet because it was leaky.
Did they give you a
I did not.
refund for?
But they didn't charge me more money. They threatened to charge me more money if I didn't fix my. It was like, just the thing inside of it was broken.
I had that happen.
Well, I think it's maybe a good idea for the town to consider if someone does a project where they replace fixtures, not just toilets, but fixtures in their house to low flow and whatever. Maybe there's some credit that they can get on their water bill for a number of months or something, because the whole goal is to use less water. So
That was my thinking. Yes. Thanks.
you should bring that up to Rob.
Okay.
Jeff, are you back yet? Madison, can you text him?
I do not have Jeff Armistead's number in my cell phone, so no. We have a quorum. Technically, we can get started. It's
I'm
Oh,
back.
there he is. Ta-da-da.
Okay.
Page 58.
no, we already went through 58.
No, we didn't,
Did we?
because I have questions on it.
Oh, well, I wrote down none, so I thought we'd gone through it.
No. We're going to start with Jeff.
Sorry, is 58
Landscaping standards.
actually page 14?
Oh, that's a tough question.
Or
It's 15.
15.
15?
Yep.
15. So landscaping standards.
We didn't do 14.
We did.
We did.
We did?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that's where Scott pointed out that we have additional referencing to wood so that will need to come through this whole section.
All right. Well, I'm sorry. I'm not done with that page yet then.
Okay.
Why, given the fact that we are pushing or being moved into non-combustible materials, why are we not going to allow stucco? Because I mean, once you get into non-combustible materials, you're getting pretty limited, and that is certainly a non-combustible material that, when done correctly and used correctly, and obviously that's subjective, but it can.
We're allowing for it, Jeff, just as a secondary building material. Right? Is that what you're?
As in less than 50%?
I don't think we give a percentage, and we could in the future have illustrations that get to the intent. But if
Not have stucco in the 100 block?
So this language is essentially the 100 block standards. I think it might be slightly tweaked, but we as staff felt that because this only applies to mixed use 1, which it used to be Old Town commercial, I think primarily, that area is kind of an extension of the 100 block. So we felt that it was appropriate to kind of carry forward those material standards. But I mean, if there's modifications, we're certainly welcome. Those suggestions are certainly welcome.
Well, it's just, I guess I'm just getting at it's allowed, just not as a primary, what Scott is saying.
You've got the art studio, you've got Magusto's, you've got Alpine Kind, you've got the country club. And some of those are primary, some of them are secondary.
Well, Magusto's is primarily stucco.
Yeah.
Also, Lynn, we have Old Town Commercial that's shop and hop to the car wash as well.
So bullet point 3 does say cementitious 3-coat stucco may be appropriate, and I don't know the difference between that and generic stucco, but it does. Bullet point 3 does say you can use a specific type of stucco as a primary building material, but not on building facades facing Main Street. So maybe that doesn't resolve anything.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is it already is being used on Main Street, which theoretically means now that that's almost historical.
right.
Like, I don't know what the intent is. Obviously, we don't want it to look like, some mod. You could do very modern stucco, and then you can do like what it isn't even the second story of above the bike shop where Sunrise is, in the that building has quite a bit of stucco.
Alpine Kind building?
Yeah, Alpine Kind.
Yeah, it's probably 3/4 stucco. It's river rock across the bottom.
And Angelica's art studio, the whole building is
correct. And Magusto's is.
Magusto's is
Country Club is probably 1/3, 2/3.
Yeah, almost primarily stucco.
Yeah.
So, a couple questions. Do we need, I don't want to get bogged down in revisiting the 100 block design standards, but Matt's right. We pulled these from the 100 blocks. So somehow along the way, we thought that was okay. But should we strike through or revise some of these to say that cementitious 3-coat stucco may be appropriate as a primary building material, period?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
Hands up.
Hands up.
Okay. Now can we go on to page 58?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Jeff. Landscaping standards. Jeff's first.
Other than what we talked about, let's see, let me just make sure if it's on this page or the other page. It's odd to me how specific this page is. Like talking about mulch planting beds to a depth of 2 inches. Like, wow. Like, why is all of a sudden are we getting micro in this portion? And I know this is old code that we're not touching, but to that point, we've been seemingly pushing against mulch because it's fire. It's like a fire hazard. We've been asking people to not use mulch. I'm not sure about that statement. What's our thoughts on that?
Well, it used to be 4 inches, and when we did landscaping, we had a conversation which I entered into saying 4 inches, and then if you keep adding, creates a lot of mold. And we rediscussed it and went down to 2 inches. I know how we got to the 2 inches. But at this point, the question being is, it either needs to say no wood chips and no wood mulch, or it should say gravel and stone. Because we're getting that other possibility that you're going to have to get rid of all wood mulch.
Next page answers that.
Okay, so that was the answer to that. And Jeff will come back if you have another question. Eric?
Nothing.
Can I interrupt quickly? Sorry.
Sure.
So just a real quick comment. In here, you'll note where it used to say Zone 4B, which is a USDA plant hardiness zone designation. We changed that because the USDA, I think within the last couple of years, changed all their designations. So I don't think 4B is actually what Minturn is in anymore. And what we did is in here kind of tried to dumb down that language or be less specific and say whatever the applicable zone hardiness zone is, plant hardiness zone is what you need to adhere to. So if in the future it changes again, the town doesn't have to come back in and keep changing the code. So I just wanted to note that. That's why that
was
you'll
going
see
to be
that.
one of my questions. Now you took it away from me.
Sorry.
So we're at Amanda.
So I think my question is more, or my question is very similar to Jeff's, which is the level of detail in this section. So it's page 58 and page 59. It feels like this should be more pointing similar to what we're doing with fire protection to some of those Firewise, things like that are like planting for your zones versus this like detailed. But if it's only here that the detail is, then I can understand. But that was more of a question for staff as to, very similar to Jeff, as to why we aren't listing this like the fire protection, where it's just like, hey, you need to meet this versus detailing it out. And also, like, how enforceable is this? Are we really going around and like saying, okay, well, you did it, you didn't use those low water plants, sorry, pull it up. Like, I just also wanted to understand enforceability.
Go ahead, Matt.
I would just say, from my perspective, and I haven't worked with Minturn's landscaping standards, but what I would be looking for if I were reviewing like somebody's landscape plan would be that they address these things. Okay. I don't know that anybody from the town is going to go out with their measuring tape and make sure you have 2 inches of mulch and not 2.5 inches, but.
Yeah,
I think that's primarily where this comes into play. But Scott,
yeah, I think, the fact that we spent a lot of time on these 3 years ago doesn't mean that they're great, but we at the time were given direction to come up with some water-wise standards because of the shortage of water that we were facing and will continue to face. It was very important to Michelle, and we were given that direction.
Okay.
I think
And they're
I
not someplace else. So they're not in any
no,
more like county-wide direction or statewide.
no,
Okay.
no. So these
Okay.
are, but I mean, to your point, I think even when we were adopting these and I was, communicating this is what we're adopting, I was looking at some of these going, how enforceable are these actually going to be? Because Matt's right, we're not going out with tape measures and measuring 2 inches of mulch versus 3 inches in one place. And it was, to put forth the principles of design that we're trying to get after. Um, and I think if push came to shove and we had a really bad abuser of water in town that was, constantly using too much water or, getting past their tier of water use or whatever they're supposed to be doing, we could fall back on these and say, you were supposed to have done all this stuff and you're not doing it, and your landscaping irrigation is not efficient. That's not a great reason to have unenforceable provisions in your code. I don't know if that answers your question. I
That
don't
answers my
propose that
question.
I don't think we should get rid of these now, but if it's another section where that we need to revisit to say we like the principle, but we don't like the specificity and it's a problem for staff to enforce. So let's get to something that's more realistic. I think that's something we could do in the future.
Okay. Then I'm fine with moving forward with as is, but then just so when would we look at it from that perspective, like enforceability, and would we do that now, or it sounds like in the future, like when?
Well, could we use the word, these are our recommendations?
We recommend.
Well, it does reference principles and so a landscape design should include the following, or the principles that someone should be thinking about when they're designing their landscape include appropriate use of turf, use of mulch, things that help preserve water in the soil. Then we get into specifics down below, right? And hydrozones and things like that. And those have been used. We applied those to Minturn North, and they adhered to those, and limited the amount of high hydrozone areas that they're going to be irrigating. They kind of had to do that anyways because they were dealing with very expensive and very limited water taps. But that was the intent. So I don't feel strongly
That helps.
these now. I don't think we have the time, and they haven't been a problem, so to speak, and
Okay.
they have been used.
Okay, cool.
Michael,
I have nothing.
Daryl?
Nope, not this big.
My question is, if we're getting rid of zone 4 throughout the whole thing, which is how most landscapers I know, when they go to look to what to put in, look up in there. Can we get the new recommendation and put it in there? I mean, every book I have has the old zoning map in it. All the
Yeah.
years I worked, I went, okay, zone, and where we are in the Rocky Mountains goes actually from 3, 4, and 5, depending where you're located. So I understand what Matt is saying. But he said they've taken it away and it's new. Is there any way we can find out the new and install?
3 years ago, I think, when we adopted these, I went to USDA and found out that I think the previous code referenced 5, zone 5.
Which is one of the coldest.
And then what I discovered was that Minturn was actually 4B. So we put 4B and we chose plants that were recommended for 4B. And now if you look at USDA, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, it's back to 5 or 5A or something like that. So we're like, well, this is dumb because we're going to keep switching zones, and who knows with differences in climate over the future, how often it's going to change.
Well, and our list of plants, if it's related to 4B, is probably pretty good for water usage.
Probably.
Pretty restrictive. There's one plant in there I was going to ask if we can add, because I don't know why it's not in there. It's all over Minturn and it does well without a lot of water. But we'll
I think that was the reason to switch it. And this, I think, I agree with Matt in making this recommendation. Just make it reference the appropriate USDA zone. And if that changes over time, there's resources that you can get to really quickly online to say, here's your zone.
Yeah.
Based on your location. So
Right. I think it builds in the flexibility of, again, if the zone changes for whatever reason in the future, then the town doesn't have to come back in and update the code to reflect that. So this sort of automatically does that, but it does require someone to spend a little time figuring that out. I know I've done it personally, and it's there's a lot of resources online that I found to make it pretty easy to kind of pinpoint what your zone is.
Okay. Anybody got anything else on that page?
No.
No.
Page 59. Jeff?
The only thing on 59 that I question is just, again, the specificity about mulch, talking about using wood and bark nuggets and nuts and shells and grass clippings and straw. And we all know that's great, but it just seems like we're being pushed in a direction to not use that stuff anymore, because if it's all around your house, that's not defensible space, and it's going to make your house go up in flames.
Correct.
Yes.
would anybody be opposed to us either removing that entirely or modifying it?
Modify.
Modified.
Chopped
Okay.
leaves also. Dry chopped leaves are not good.
Right.
So what I'll do is I'll look at, I don't think there's anything specific in our pending approval of our wildfire resiliency code. The first zone, 0 to 5 feet around the structure, has to be non-combustible, no plants, no nothing. But beyond that, I don't know if it precludes mulch, beds, or things like that. So what I'll do is I'll look at our code that we're about to adopt. I'll look at the state and see if there's any guidance for, should you just not allow mulch anywhere in your yard, or can you use it in certain situations?
Well, and if there's any new product, somehow I want to say there's something made from old tires,
Yes, there's a rubberized.
a rubberized one.
That really burns nicely when it gets on fire.
So that's not a good one either then. Okay.
Well, I mean, you could use rocks and stuff. And I'm not a landscaper, but
Yes.
rocks don't burn that well.
No.
I think that's where I'm going with this. Matt, is just, if we're really going to encourage the use of xeriscaping, essentially rocks and non-combustible gravel, rocks, or similar things, do we get rid of the reference to mulch entirely? Or is there a situation within the wildfire resiliency code world where mulch can be used sparingly?
I think the problem you're going to get with mulch is the average person who wants to maintain a clean landscape. Mulch keeps down the weeds.
True.
So we should maybe give something in there. Otherwise, they're just going to go out and get what I don't know. Compost last year, the gardens got a bunch of compost from Eagle County landfill and put it in the gardens down there, and they had extra and they were giving it, if somebody wanted some. It was wonderful.
Mhm.
Not only to amend the soil, but to make it look nice across the top. I don't know if it's not going to keep the weeds out though. And
Well,
but if you put down barrier cloth and then put the compost on top, you would minimize it.
this section, if you really look at the whole section, the whole goal is water efficiency. So that's why we have previously adopted requirements or suggestions for soil amendment, like compost, things that help, the organic matter and retain moisture, which is why mulch is in there, right? But if that's now conflicting with our wildfire resiliency code and other concerns, what's the next best option to that from the standpoint of water efficiency, right?
Scott, one way we could approach this is move away from the level of specificity that's in here and just say mulch needs to be applied at a depth of 2 inches. I mean, kind of some of these more general statements, but that mulch material needs to conform to the applicable requirements of the wildfire standards or something like that.
Well, yeah. And you don't have to put the 2 inches in. I mean, because if you start using rocks and pebbles, that isn't necessary.
Yeah, I think that's what bugs me about the specificity of a lot of this stuff is that it just backs you into a corner of like things change because of conditions, then you've got code that doesn't work. So back to that generalized, like things must conform to, you guys know how to write that better than I can say it. So
Okay, so that's Jeff. And we carried that conversation. Eric, do you have anything on page 59?
I don't.
Amanda?
Not for me.
Michael?
Nothing.
Daryl?
You guys addressed it. Thank you.
Hands up on going with what Scott's suggesting? Okay.
Hands up.
Page 60. Yeah.
well, you're gonna hate me, Lynn, but at the last council meeting, you were there too, and Councilman Rodine was talking about the minimum landscaping requirements of 1 tree per 1,000 acres or feet. And now given, that this is kind of falls in that same ballpark of if we're going to be requiring that trees be planted, I think we should have some provisions in here for alternatives for plants that are either more drought tolerant in lieu of a tree that requires a lot of water. It just doesn't seem like at least statement A there under the general standards falls in line with where we're at with water.
I think we already did that on page 66 when we went through, didn't we? With drought tolerant trees and shrubs. I mean, in our listing, I think we went through that.
Well, this just says real clearly 1 tree.
That was because of the size of the lots, and it came up that you should have one per, I think it based it on 5,000 square foot lot. I mean, we can certainly change that. But I think if
was this a Janet thing?
Yes, it was a Janet thing. And it's the very last paragraph on the page. And I don't remember what was there prior to that.
Well, most of this is the existing code.
Yeah.
Since Janet was here, but why we got it changed at that point? Because it did get changed at that point.
He was a landscape architect.
Yeah, and I don't remember, I think we added. So we can go backwards on that, but I'd like to see us at least have a couple trees here and there.
I don't know that staff has a real strong feeling on this other than, there's some importance to an urban forest. The canopy provides a lot of things. Habitat for birds and squirrels and stuff like that, shade. It's super important around parking areas to provide some shade and cooling. But if you want to back off the 1 per 1,000 and just come up with some other metric, I think that's fine too.
Right. I think we should keep trees because people are birders. Birds are disappearing. I think you could get into an issue there, but I don't think it has to be 5.
The one thing that we might think about, and this goes directly to the wildfire resiliency code that we're about to adopt, which requires a minimum distance between the canopies of trees, 10 feet. And if you're looking at a smaller lot and someone's faced with, one tree per 1,000 square feet, but they literally can't fit it in without violating the spacing between canopies or the spacing between a new tree and a proposed structure. Maybe there's either something we could put in writing here that, to your point, Matt, with the other standard, it needs to comply with the Wildfire Resiliency Code, and or we provide the waiver provision for this.
Well, when you say canopy, the 10 feet between the canopies of the trees, at what age are you measuring that?
Doesn't say.
Because obviously, if you plant trees 10 feet apart and they're 2 years old,
Right.
they're going to be touching each other when they're 10 years old. And you see that all the time. And obviously that looks great, in a real urban, well-established, 15-year down the road kind of a site. But given that that's how most of the forest fires travel is through the canopies of the trees, then, I'm just fighting with this, or I'm struggling with this whole unfortunate situation that we are in, and the reality that we are in, and this whole, we're all learning every year. I feel like we're getting a little smarter about what our lots need to feel like and with being defensible. And so when we're trying to apply standards to a new development, I think we have to leave ourselves room in our code so that we're not making it obsolete and yet not throwing the baby out with the bathwater in terms of the feel and the what we all want in terms of greenery, because we all like that too. So I don't know if it means that we have to have some more language that allows some options, I think is really what my gut tells me. I don't know. What does everybody else?
In Fair Plays code, they allow for some flexibility. So there's some minimum requirements for the number of trees, but you can swap those out with shrubs, kind of, 2 shrubs for every tree or 3 shrubs for every tree or something like that to give some flexibility.
Mm-hmm. I guess that's maybe where I'm going.
I noticed we have a very large front yard, and it's been quite hard to try and keep that grass relatively green because of no shade. Well, finally, the trees have gotten up high enough. I don't even know if I'm going to have to water it in the front yard now because of the shade from the trees really diminishes how much water I have to put on that grass. Yeah. So, we might want to kind of just see what works. I see what you're saying, Jeff, but the trees do help on water conservation. That's for darn sure.
I have the same situation on the front of my house between the north side and the south side. The south side is shaded better, and that grass stays beautifully green where this other side burns out. And it doesn't take a lot of trees. I mean, I think I have 1 or 2 there. But I think we should, I like what Scott said about giving them an alternative, but I think we should have, say, a minimum of 3 trees or something instead of 5 if you think it's too many. Odd numbers always look better than even numbers.
Yeah.
Well, and even pine trees versus deciduous trees, leafy trees. Pine trees, the pine trees that I have in my backyard, the pine needles fall and no grass will grow. So, they may provide some shade, but the pine needles are so acidic that if you don't rake them up, you can't grow grass. So
you have to rake them up anyhow for fire hazard.
Exactly.
I'm constantly raking up under my pine trees. I mean, not constantly, but I do it now. This year I've done it already because we've had the ability. There's no snow. But normally I do it 2 or 3 times a year.
But more drought tolerant trees are probably leafy deciduous trees, right?
Yes.
I don't know about that.
No.
I think there's drought tolerant in both species, whether it be deciduous or pine, whatever. I mean,
Yeah,
it's the same thing. It's Mother Nature. I mean, our whole forest around here is full. But I would like to see us at least have something in there, whether it be 5 trees or not. I don't know how you want to word it, Scott, but I think, like you say, if we ask for 3 trees and somebody only wants to put 2 in, and they are willing to put 2 shrubberies in instead, because a shrub can be a lilac bush. I mean,
Right.
that gives a little height and color, you know. So again, can we look at you looking into that a bit?
Yeah, I think we can come back and, I think part of our goal was not to change too much of the landscaping requirements or lighting requirements or anything at this time, just because we identified several months ago that we just wouldn't have the time to really go into the weeds on this. But at the same time, we've obviously made some changes to try to make it either read better or fit in with this section of the code better. I think we can come back with some potential revisions. I do, just from a interpretation and application standpoint, I like the 1 tree or 1 shrub per square feet calculation, because it's less arbitrary in my mind than saying every house needs to have 3 trees.
Yeah.
It's based on the size of the lot, and then if someone comes to us and says, I know it says this, but I can't physically fit this many trees on my lot, doesn't make any sense, then there's maybe an option for some other landscape treatment, whether it's shrubs, a non-combustible. I think the county actually has a list of ignition resistant shrub species or vegetation that I'm going to look into that we might want to adopt as well. So maybe giving some more flexibility. Maybe we stick with the minimum requirement and let people give them some more flexibility, or the waiver provision, and make sure that the species are drought tolerant, and that if they're going to be used in a specific defensible space zone, like within 5 feet out from the house out to 30 feet is where they want spacing and grouping of shrubs and spacing between canopies, making sure that those match up with the county's recommended list of ignition resistant shrubs or plants. Does that make sense?
That makes
Yes.
sense.
Yes.
Cool.
And Scott,
Okay.
we could also look at, instead of doing 3 trees per house, we could instead increase the 1 per. So we could do 1 per 2,000 square feet instead of 1 per 1,000 square feet, and that still gets you 3 trees on a 5,000 square foot lot, because 2.5 you'd round up to 3. So we could also look at something like that as well to try and lower that initial requirement.
Okay, so that was with Jeff. Now we go to Eric.
I don't have anything on this one.
Nothing? Amanda,
Nope.
60?
No, nothing more than 60.
Michael?
No, nothing more on page 60.
Daryl?
Nope, nothing more.
And I have nothing more. So hands up on what we've just discussed.
Hands up.
Page 61.
Nothing.
Eric?
Nope.
Amanda?
Nothing for me.
Daryl?
Nothing. Mike?
Nothing for me.
Oh, I'm sorry, Michael. I apologize. I have one question. All plant materials used for required landscaping must comply with or exceed minimum standards in the Colorado Nursery Act regulations and other current edition of the American Standard for Nursery Stock. I don't expect all of us to be given a copy of that. I don't expect that whole thing to be put in here because I don't know how big it is. But is there any way we can get a copy here in the office so if people wanted to come in and look at it, they could? Not knowing what it is, what the contents are.
Yeah, I can touch on this. So this was a standard that's in the state model land use code that I suggested be incorporated. And the town does have a similar standard. It refers to some, I think it refers to something like nurserymen, some standards of nurserymen, which that organization no longer exists. So because I know when I reviewed this with Scott and Madison, they kind of had a similar question. What is this? And yeah, we can I think I mean I won't speak for Scott and Madison, but I think we can try and pull some information about this together. It does very basic. My basic understanding is it focuses on ensuring that you're not planting plants with that are infested with bugs and things like that. It kind of revolves around the quality and health of the plants you're installing.
They're not introducing some kind of fungus mold or some kind of insect that damages trees.
Exactly, and I think it kind of says you need to get your plant material from I think a certified nursery or again I'm far from an expert on all this, but it sort of establishes a minimum baseline for the types of plants you're installing for required landscaping.
Like you
But
can't go to California with your friend in their truck and bring back a bunch of trees from their yard because they have different insects than we do. And they can
Right.
carry something in here that can decimate our forest. So,
Yeah, if you go online, there is a Colorado Nursery Act regulation that you can find, and so we could provide that.
yeah.
But it is, similar to some other provisions. If there was a problem, if someone brought in a bunch of substandard stock from somewhere else and created a problem with an infestation, and we needed to enforce this, I think we could. Um, I don't see the harm in including this new provision, though.
No,
To
I don't see the harm. I'm just saying it'd be nice if we, like personally, I'd like to read it.
Yep.
But if somebody came in and said, well, what is this? You could say, oh, we've got a copy here. Let me just let you browse through it or let me loan it to you or give them a copy at that point if somebody came.
It's really geared towards the nursery industry itself.
Is it?
Guardrails for people that are running nurseries and providing stock. But we can try to print that off the internet.
Just, if it's 100 pages, maybe not. Maybe we just reference where you can find it on the internet.
Okay.
That might be another way to do it.
Yeah.
And then all landscaping with clear vision must comply with standards set forth. So landscaping locating in a clear vision. There is a place in my neighborhood where there is a corner with a stop sign, and between the fence and the trees, it blocks the clear vision. However, it's been there forever. But is there some way, the clear vision is what, on any corner of 15 feet, and it's a 3-foot fence or something?
yeah, so in a clear vision area, typically, and I know we just went through this in the first part of Article 3, but typically there's restrictions on how tall plant materials can be. I think it's maybe a limit of 3 feet. And then if you're going to be over that, like if there is a tree, then the branches and stuff typically have to be pruned up to, I think, a height of 8 feet or something like that. So they're not interfering with line of sight at intersections.
Okay. That was the only question I had. Anybody else went through? Daryl's got something else.
Matt, you said something about clear vision, 8 feet. I know the fire department is asking for mitigation purposes, you have a minimum of 6 feet. In other words, no limbs below 6 feet. So I don't know if that goes with the same.
So the language, I just pulled up the first part of Article 3, this is what's in the code today. It says trees exceeding 30 inches in height may be located in a clear vision area, provided that all branches and foliage are removed to a height of 8 feet above the grade. And then It says no planting, fence, wall, structure, and/or temporary obstruction exceeding 30 inches can be in a clear vision area. So there's kind of this zone between 30 inches and 8 feet that's supposed to be nothing going on there.
Okay.
Okay, is everybody okay with that and having them do something about that Colorado State thing? Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm okay.
Page 62.
Hey,
Yeah. Oh.
My thing there is B and D on irrigation systems. So why are we saying when available, raw water shall be used for irrigation? What is that?
Isn't raw water what they're using in Aminda Ditch?
Correct.
Yeah.
That
And that's
doesn't-
also what we use up at Public Works in this cemetery, I believe.
So just to reduce the amount of treated water coming through our plant that is then getting used on irrigation is the idea.
It really, and practically speaking, doesn't apply to too many people, right?
Correct.
There's not many people who have the water rights with which to divert
Right.
water to use.
So,
But when they do, we would like them to.
so it's worth just keeping in there for that reason.
Also, you can now use rain barrels up to a 55-gallon drum, and that's raw water.
That's true.
You can collect the rain now?
You can
Yeah.
collect rain now. Eagle River Water and Sand says it's fine.
And there was a program that we took advantage of last year where they gave us a rain barrel for free. It was either through the Eagle River Coalition or the Water and Sand District. And we filled that sucker up twice.
We're selling them at Ace.
55 gallon. Yeah. When I was, well, that's a story. When I was young, my uncle did it. We washed our hair with it. Oh. Soft rainwater, soft. Okay.
The other thing was that in D, I'm assuming most people don't have a soil moisture sensing device, but the irrigation management system, I would assume, is just like a clock with zones, like a normal irrigation clock that people have. That's what this is referencing.
Yeah.
I do know there are irrigation sensor or rainwater sensors that you can integrate with an irrigation system. So if it rains, it automatically shuts off your sprinkler system, so you're not watering when it's raining outside.
I think
No,
it's
there
called
are
Rainbird or something.
I'm sorry, Madison.
I said I think it's called Rainbird or something.
Rainbird may make it. There's multiples, but yes, there are. The problem with them is if they break and you don't catch it, then you're burning everything. So, but yes, there are. Thank you.
Well, I guess it's just goes back to that whole enforceability thing. Like, nobody's going out and checking this.
Right. I think if I were in Scott or Madison's shoes, I would be looking at this stuff when somebody comes in with their landscape plan for through the DRB process and saying, is your irrigation system design in compliance with these standards? But you're right. I mean, some of these standards are very are from a code enforcement standpoint would be very tedious to try and deal with.
Yeah, I'm not saying that we strike things because they're not enforceable. I think the intention is correct. So I was just bringing it up. That's all I have.
Eric,
I don't have anything for this one.
Amanda,
nothing for this one.
Michael.
Nothing for this one.
Scott, do we have to, or should we add anything in reference to rain barrel collections?
Scott, we cannot hear you.
Can't hear me?
Now I can.
Okay.
Couldn't.
Daryl, I don't know if we should, or I don't see a problem in that. What are you thinking?
Well, I know since Eagle River said, yeah, it's fine to do it for irrigation purposes. Various retail outlets are now starting to sell smaller rain barrels, which are about 33-gallon ones, not the big ones. And so it might be a way of putting it for in here saying, well, you could use those if you want to, but people might ask, can we use a rain barrel?
Mm-hmm.
So my understanding is state law actually changed where you're allowed to, it was within the last few years where, because historically every drop of water that fell on the ground in Colorado was allocated to somebody and you couldn't collect rainwater. But I think that law, the state law changed so you were allowed to start having rain barrels of a certain size. So I think across the board in Colorado, you're allowed to do that as long as you're not collecting too much rainwater. But we could somewhere in here include some language that says rain barrels may be used in accordance with state law or something like that.
That'd be good.
I could see after B, when we're talking about raw water, the next one could be rain barrels or water collection systems in accordance with state law can be used as well.
Yeah, that's a smart way to put it.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Good suggestion, Daryl.
Hands up.
Hands up.
Page 63. Jeff,
Nothing.
Eric,
Nothing.
Amanda,
Nothing.
Michael,
Nothing.
Nothing. Nothing.
okay. Am I going off kilter asking you to add a plant?
No, this is your wheelhouse.
Under perennials and ground covers, before catnip, put in campanula, C-A-M-P-A-N-E-L-A, E-U-A, I'm sorry, C-A-M-P-A-N-U-L-A. And there are multiple varieties. And it is what I would consider an old perennial of Minturn, because it's all around town. There's conglomerata, there's one that's for like rock beds, and that will grow with rocks covering the soil. There's 3 of them that I know of for this area, and I can get you the 3 names, but if you just put campanula, that's fine. Because we don't get into all the different things. The one for the rock garden is campanula harebell. And I know conglomerata because I've got that in my yard, and the other one is in Rebecca's yard, and I can't think of the name of it. I'd have to look it up. Other than that, I have nothing else. Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to tell those things, Lynn, but you do it.
Page 64, I didn't have anything on. Anybody else?
No, that's way out of my wheelhouse.
No.
Okay, page 65,
Same.
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 66,
Same.
Same.
So we just quickly went through that. Good. We've got about 4 pages left. Page 67.
No, nothing.
I got something. It's probably redundant. It's just on the maintenance part during a huge drought. If your lawn dies because you can't water it, obviously it's going to be for everybody. So it's probably doesn't mean anything on number 5 where it says maintenance. But that's just extreme circumstances, probably this year.
Well, sorry to butt in, but the tough part of that, Eric, is that some developments have to put up bond money for their landscaping that the town holds until you can show that it's established.
Okay.
And if you, obviously that's an extenuating circumstance if we're in a drought and there's, problems with water or, watering, temporary watering. But you need to keep that in mind, I guess.
Okay.
This is specific to subdivisions and bigger developments. This isn't necessarily specific to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, Scott?
I think that's a good point, though. I mean, if I read through here, it more or less says that if you're required to plant anything and it dies, you have to replace it. So I think technically, if you had grass And again, this only refers to required landscaping for a subdivision or development, but if it died, you would have to, regardless of whether that was a drought or you just neglected to water it, it requires that you replace it. So I don't know, Scott, I don't know that I've ever seen any language where it says if there's drought conditions that you're kind of exempt, but
No, where I was going with my thoughts to Eric's, because it's a great point. I think the town or any town that's in that situation would probably issue an emergency something, right? To say, hey, there is no water.
Yeah.
We know that our code requires X, Y, and Z, but we're gonna put that on hold for a period of time until the drought's over or something. I could see that.
Well, Eagle River has already preemptively started that process here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And they were meeting on it. I mean, they may have met today, or I know that they're talking about putting in some restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
And I just heard a story today about the city of San Antonio and how their reservoirs are down under 10%, and they are literally running out of water. The whole city.
And then you've got Hawaii flooding.
Mm-hmm.
Page 67. Jeff,
No, I'm good with this.
Eric,
That's the page we're on, right? The one
Yeah.
where,
oh,
yeah.
that's,
yeah.
we're done with, okay, I apologize. Exterior lighting standards.
What page is that?
It's page 68.
68.
I thought. Oh, okay.
Jeff,
No, I don't have anything on that.
Eric,
Nope.
Actually, no, I do have something. Question. Is it a typo or on 2C holiday lighting sunrise and 10 p.m.? Shouldn't it be sunset and 10 p.m.?
No, you can have your lights on during the day.
No, remember when we went through this code update to clarify holiday lighting versus festoon lighting or, cafe lights? I think I had proposed certain hours, and during the discussion at council, at least, it was we want to we want to let people have lights on pretty much all day. Is that correct, Madison? Am I recalling that correctly?
Yeah, especially because obviously the sun rises and sets at different times. It was important that we had the 10 p.m. cutoff, but if we had like a 7 a.m. start time, that could still be dark at certain points of the year versus others. So I think council decided to you can put it up when the sun rises, but not before then because there already needs to be light out. So you're not bugging your neighbors with extra light. But it has to be cut off by 10 p.m. That was their kind of compromise to people leaving it on 24/7.
It seems like a waste of energy.
but festoon lighting is like those party lights on decks. And
Correct.
there's no limit to when those have to go off.
No, ma'am.
yeah, that was a comment I had, Lynn.
Oh,
and
it
I was
should be the
told-
reverse because people drive through Minturn in the dark and see the Christmas lights and it attracts them to coming here. But when your neighbor's got lights on all night long that shine in your window,
It's annoying.
it's
You know, the council, they're the ones who decided to parse
Talk
it
to your
this
elected
way.
officials.
Also was the ones, right?
There's a house on the Eagleville Golf Course when you're driving towards Home Depot, toward the roundabout. I forget what hole that is, but they've had their festoon lights on for 6 years, and they've never shut off. They're on 24/7 for 6 years.
This is impressive strands of lights.
oh,
Yeah.
they've been replaced.
Yeesh.
I mean, I could see Christmas being left on till midnight and still turning them off, but it just seems strange to me that when your restaurants are still open, you're going to go out and turn all the Christmas lights off because they stay open till probably at least 11, some of them, during that high season.
Well, it was council, right? Like Madison said.
Drinking.
Council. Shortly.
Yes, I think also the thought was that Christmas lights are theoretically more in a residential area. So people want them to turn off. A great example of right across from Town Hall. Somebody wanted us to turn our Christmas lights off at like 7:30. So we were just like, no, we'll keep them on till 10 because that's when the code says we have to shut them off. But in the more commercial areas, the restaurants who are likely to have that cafe lighting, they are open till later. I mean, I think bars, I think Magusa's might be open even past midnight. I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah.
They're there after dark. But so they could take the opportunity to continue using the cafe lighting on their outside seating if they had it, and would not be beholden to the more residential geared Christmas light 10 p.m. shut off.
Okay.
They can residential keep festoon on all night long.
Yes.
Okay.
But I would just add, Madison, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lynn, but you were saying that holiday light. So if a business had, like Magusta's had Christmas lights on, they would have to be off by 10, but their kind of twinkle overhead cafe style lighting could stay on all night long.
That's
And
correct.
I got you.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's any interest in changing any of this. I mean, I heard from Scott Madison that
I remember
leave
this
this as
being
is.
at council. I think I was at the meeting and it didn't make sense to me then, but I guess when I saw it in here again.
Christmas, people are passionate about their Christmas lights, and they're passionate about not having lights on all night long.
My Christmas
Yeah.
lights at the store stayed on all night long
Hmm.
because it drew attention to the fact that I had a business there. The lamp or the post in front that had my sign on it had one of those solar lights. So if there was no car going down the highway, they shut off. But as a car light approached it, it turned it on so they could read the sign. And that was there when I got the store. Both of Kathy's and mine were like that. And that was great. But I would turn them off during the day when I was at the store. You know, the reverse. I kept them on at night to draw the attention. Because that's when you see them during the day. They don't always show up. Anyhow, okay. So we are done with that.
Oh,
I
I have
assume
a question.
Daryl has a question.
Staff is asking us about should flagpole lighting be required to be mounted at the top of the pole and downcast? Yes, I strongly suggest that.
Okay, that was something I wanted to note before we moved on. Because right now the language in here, I mean, in other places it very specifically says all exterior lighting has to be downcast, full cutoff, and under flagpole lighting, the existing language all it says is no more than 2 light fixtures. Other communities I work in, it specifically says any lighting of a flagpole has to be top mounted. So there are lights that you can install at the very top of a flagpole and they aim down and follow the flag and all that. So I think it's good if the intent is to try and maintain a dark night sky, because otherwise you have flagpole upcast or uplighting of flagpoles, then it kind of beams off into outer space.
Like Home Depot.
Yeah.
Sure.
We may want to just alert Rob and Public Works because I think our flagpole in front of Town Hall is uplit. I think.
I think you're right.
Yeah, I think you are right.
It would be a legal non-conforming light, Scott.
Yeah.
Okay, is everybody okay with page 68? Yes, yes.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
9,
Nothing.
Nothing.
Eric,
Nothing.
Amanda,
Nothing.
Michael,
Yeah, 69 is disturbing to me out of the entire packet. 69 is disturbing. The bottom of the page, number 2, note to Planning Commission that it says any unlawful exterior lighting in existence at the adoption or amendment of this section must be brought into conformance with the requirements and standards set forth in section 1 within 1 calendar year of the date of such adoption and amendment. The upper parts of all that, non-conforming exterior, yes, of course, if it's gone for a year, yes, but this is something that when I first read it, I thought it was a typo, and I think that it should be scratched because I think it's a little crazy to go around all of Old Town. And what are we going to send Kevin out in a year and make everybody that has a non-conforming current light replace it on their house? I think that's super extreme. I think the entirety of the page above that is definitely makes sense 100%. But I think, the new provision that requires any exterior lighting that has never been in compliance with the town's lighting standards be replaced with compliant, maybe I'm reading it wrong, but
Michael, Daryl has something to say on the subject. Hold on.
Mike, what has happened in the last 3 years? And all lights that are sold, all light bulbs that are sold in any retail store is now totally changed. And they're the non-conforming light bulbs. I think this is addressing the non-conforming light bulbs. As soon as your light bulb goes out, you cannot replace that one unless you have a whole bunch of others left in your pantry. But if you have to go out and buy a new light, the new lights are totally different, and they're not with the other lights. I think might
Does the new
address-
bulb fit into the old structure?
Yes, they fit into the structure.
So what
Can
we're
I-
talking about here is bulb rather than fixture?
No. I can try and clarify what the intent here is, and if it isn't appropriate, we can certainly scratch it. But what it's trying to get at is if you have a light fixture, because right now, I don't believe Minturn has any standards related to light bulbs or luminaires is a more technical term. In other codes I've worked with, they are requirements like your light bulb can have only so many lumens, which gets it brightness, things like that. I don't think Minturn has anything like that. So what this really is getting at is if you have an exterior light fixture that has never complied with the town's lighting standards, in other words, it's an illegal light fixture, you have a grace period of 1 year to replace that light fixture. And I understand that may come across as extreme. And there's certainly, I know in talking with Scott and Madison, concerns about how does that enforce and things like that. So the kind of, and I've given it some thought based on those discussions. I mean, if you have an illegal light fixture right now, the town through code enforcement could just come out and say you have to replace this because it's non-compliant, it's illegal. This at least provides a grace period of a year to give folks an opportunity to go out and do that. And it's really aimed at trying to get rid of lights that are a nuisance. And like if somebody, maybe extreme example is they have a spotlight on the side of their house and it's just never been compliant with the town's lighting standards, that the intent is to try and get rid of those things. But again, if that seems like too much, we can certainly scrap it or modify this language.
I
I
just
don't
think
know
that
how you would make everybody in town know about this being in here unless you were putting in a new house.
When you do something like this, whether it's lighting or, Red Cliff is dealing with some storage issues. They've got people storing crap on their yards, and it came to a head, and we're going to probably go through a process where it's always been illegal, but it's never been enforced. So in this situation, if this came to pass, we would be obligated as staff to really do a pretty robust outreach through the newsletter and every other means that we have to say, hey, these kind of lights have always been, or at least for the last 20 years or whatever, however long we've had dark sky lighting requirements that are supposed to have downcast or shielded light fixtures. However long that's been in place, we now are serious about enforcing it. So if you have fixtures that don't comply with that, you have a year And here's what you can do. You can, choose from these types of light fixtures. Maybe the town would even incentivize people by providing some financial assistance. I doubt that, but you never know. But the point is, we would, to your point, Lynn, I think we'd have to do a pretty robust public outreach to say, hey, this is nothing new, but now we're really serious about enforcing it because dark sky compliance is really important to our community. It's what we're known for, among other things. I don't know what the reasons would be. That's where this is coming from. But if you don't think it's a good idea, then
Well, or could we do something like, if you choose to replace these fixtures, say the fixture breaks, or they're doing a remodel, or they want a different look, you will need to follow the new fixture code.
So it does say
It doesn't
that.
matter because nobody's going to really read it. They're just going to go out and buy a light fixture if you've lived here for 30 years. That's the problem. I'm sorry, Matt, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, so bullet point one, and it's broken into sub paragraph A and B, but that's what that's trying to get is if you have a legal non-conforming light fixture, so that means a light fixture that maybe was allowed in the past, and the lighting standards have changed, and the light fixture you have is no longer compliant. You can continue to use that light fixture, but if you do replace it, then it has to be replaced with a compliant fixture. Or if for whatever reason you don't use that light fixture for a year, then it has to be replaced with a compliant light fixture. And I understand there's challenges with enforcing that. But that only addresses light fixtures that at one point in time were allowed under the town's lighting standards. The second paragraph is really getting at if you have a light fixture that has never been allowed and you just decide to go install it, that needs to be replaced with something that's compliant. And again, I the town does, through code enforcement, could go out and do that. I recognize that's probably not a priority from a code enforcement standpoint, and maybe that just needs to be addressed on a case by case basis or complaint by complaint basis. It was just trying to get at, like Scott said, this is dark sky compliant lighting is something the town is serious about, and we want to try and work towards that goal. But if that language in here is too much, we can scratch it.
Bullet point one makes complete sense. To me, I understand that. I also understand what Daryl's saying. Nowadays, if you're going to buy light bulbs, you're pretty much getting, the new light bulbs. I just think that, I think that we should scratch two completely. But if we're not scratching two, I think that I think it's going to get super complicated, and basically unlawful lighting and effect of our current proposed lighting, whether 90% of the town have or whatever, people have lights that were all approved when their houses were built, then I would think that I think striking it completely is good, but I think otherwise I think if people had permits to build their houses and their lighting was approved when they built their house, just because it doesn't comply with the new code, I think that the way that that's written is basically saying you got to replace all of it within a year. So I think that either it needs to be removed or it needs to be added, unlawful exterior lighting in existence and less permitted at the time of being built. But I think that it definitely gets super complicated because, there's certain neighborhoods and neighbors that just have random problems all over town. And
Michael, if you don't mind, I can jump in. If your lighting was, if anybody's lighting was approved at the time of their house being constructed, then theoretically it was approved under the current code at that time, and so it is a legal non-conforming. It is not illegal non-conforming. This is if you just install the light with no consultation with the code and it was never legal. That's where this section comes in. However, if it was approved, then theoretically it was checked against the current code at that time, and that is legal non-conforming, and this section does not apply to that.
Can
The
we
section
just,
above
that
it
makes,
does.
can we just add in there, Madison, then, add into that section versus eliminated? Because I understand the point you're getting at. Sometimes people just get crazy and put random lights anywhere. And, but can we add in there,
Well, that's
any
what
unlawful
C1.
exterior lighting except legal non-conforming? Just add except legal non-conforming, because it's
That's what C1 covers. C1 covers all legal non-conforming, and C2 covers any illegal non-conforming. So it's already addressed, literally like 2 paragraphs up.
I have a idea. I don't know what the rest of the commission feels about paragraph 2, but if the recommendation is to strike that, it doesn't mean the town couldn't take this up as a kind of public service code enforcement light kind of public outreach, with or without a new code. Our existing lighting standards are for downcast, dark sky compliant light fixtures. And if the town wanted to spend Kevin Rindy's time educating the community and then following up within the next 2 years on some enforcement stuff, that's another way to kind of softly do this rather than having it hard and fast. Anything within a year of this adoption, we're coming after you kind of thing, which is not the intent. But I see how it's being taken that way. It takes the pressure off of us effectively. And it doesn't mean the town, if Rob and Kevin and the council want to direct Kevin to go do that, we still could do that. Does that make sense?
But then we would remove number 2. I'm leaning. I mean, I feel like this is the really strong language that I kind of agree with Mike, that we haven't had this type of strong language when we're talking about the plants, when we're talking about anything above. And all of a sudden it's stuffed in here and it just feels a little odd. But that's just me, and I don't think we're not enforcing it, going around and saying what's unlawfully installed. I don't know.
I disagree. I mean, I think that a lot of thought was put into both of these, 1 and 2. And I think that how Madison clarified it.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with number 1, Jeff. I mean, it's the unlawful exterior lighting. Like, some neighbor's gonna have to turn in their neighbor to even identify this. We don't have enforcement.
Yeah, but that's kind of the point. I mean, we spent a lot of time creating the code where we wanted dark sky compliance.
Yeah, no, we want dark sky. I just don't see how this.
But if you're afraid of enforcing it, then what's the point?
We have no enforcement arm to enforce it. Like, if there was somebody that was going out there and wasn't pitting neighbor against neighbor, I'd be fine with leaving it in. But I feel like the only way we're going to know this is if you're turning your neighbor in for unlawfully installing exterior lighting.
Doesn't it? It starts, like Scott said, it starts with education.
Yeah.
The majority of the people in town probably don't even have any idea that we've had dark sky compliant code for quite a while, right? And if, Michael's covered, let's say if somebody had their house plans came through and they built and they have lights that are legal, non-conforming lights, this doesn't apply to them and they don't have to do anything. But if Joe Blow just threw up a light on the side of his house and didn't go through the town for any of it and just put up some lights and they were really annoying, and then there was an outreach from the town that educated everybody that, hey, we're trying to do away with these lights. Well, yeah, there is a little bit of, yeah, look, Mr. Neighbor. I mean, I gotta say, not trying to throw people under the bus, but I mean, my sister's lights on the front of her house for the last 15 years have been the most obnoxious like lights in town. And I said, put a dimmer on them. Like they were too bright. They would blind you almost as you would drive by her house at night. And I was just like, when are you going to get with the program and get some lights that are a little more like code compliant? And
What about our, yeah, I don't know. I think we're down a rabbit hole.
Jeff, with what Scott's, would you be okay, just out of curiosity, with what Scott was saying is that we just sort of bump it out, let Kevin look around, and obviously if somebody puts something up, as Scott said, there's other ways to deal with a new annoying light, but we start with educating and getting a general idea of what thoughts are and what's technically legal that most people have had on their houses for a gazillion years, and what's not. And I definitely understand the intent of downlighting and stuff like that, but I also think that I don't think that we should technically jump into it just because we really don't have a general idea of exactly how many, whether it affects a bunch of homes or whether 90% of Old Town has approved, lighting that they've had since they built their house. Is just throwing that out there, Jeff.
I get it, but I also get that Kevin can't do his job if he doesn't have something to stand on. And I guess I know it's a subjective thing where one person's going to think this is really heavy-handed, and another person is going to think, well, when are you going to step up to the mic and like take credit for the code that you've put out there and try to enforce it? And if you don't have something in writing that's going to help you enforce it, then what's the point of having dark sky compliant if we're not going to enforce it in the first place? And granted, like, yeah, any new build that comes through, we're going to review it under those guidelines, but there's the majority of town is not getting redeveloped.
No, I understand that, but my thing is what's Kevin going to do? Knock on a door to somebody and they, and say, "Oh, your lights aren't compliant." Like, for example, like the Wing Place, for example, or just, random, say Gusty's dad's house, just random places in town. And then he's going to find out that, oh, well, actually, they've been there since the house was built. That creates a lot of time and energy that might not get you anywhere. So
if I'm, I'm trying to hear both sides here, and I think we probably will need some direction. I just saw Rob in the background. This is a section that, quite frankly, we need to talk to Rob about whether or not, if this were to come to pass and we have a 1-year calendar deadline, it does invoke staff time and Kevin and a coordinated effort of how we're going to approach this. He may not have any appetite for that. So I think your opinion matters, and if we have direction from commission, is this good from standpoint of what Jeff's pointing out, to have something on the books that we can enforce? Is it untenable for other commission members? What's the direction? But I guess what I'm saying is, the reality is we still need to check with Rob as the town manager and whether he wants to take on a time limited enforcement action, right? Or is the option that I was talking about, this is good, and we are going to get serious about dark sky, but we want to do it over 2 or 3 years, and we want to give people some grace to get their act together, essentially, and give staff the ability to really start chipping away at it. I think when Kathy was here and the town was serious about getting rid of junk cars and some other stuff, there was a time period, people were put on notice. if you do come across something that's non-conforming or illegal, you write that person a letter after the grace period's over, right? After the education period's over, you then start writing people letters, but it takes time, to Michael's point. So, what's the direction on this? Are we gonna keep it for
I'd
now?
like to have definitions for non-conforming light and definition for unlawful light.
So, just generally, a legal non-conforming light would be any light that was installed in compliance with the code, whatever code was in place at the time that light was installed. So at one point in time, that light fixture was compliant with the town's code, as Madison said. And so if you have a light that was, say, installed 20 years ago, it was compliant at that time, and now the town's lighting standards have changed, and your what was once compliant is no longer compliant, that's considered a legal non-conforming light fixture. So at one point in time, it was legal. An unlawful light fixture would be one that has at no point in time ever complied with the town's lighting standards. And somebody could argue, I know a lot of communities didn't have lighting standards for a long time. So somebody could say, well, I installed it before the town even had lighting standards. And, I think that could potentially fall under a legal non-conforming light fixture. But the idea is to get rid of illegal light fixtures that, again, an unlawful light fixture is one that has never, ever complied with whatever lighting standards the town had. And I want to clarify that even without paragraph 2 in here, the town, if I called and said, Joe Schmo down the street has an illegal light fixture in Minturn, the code enforcement could go out and deal with that today. This language doesn't need to be in here. Really, what this does is it does put the town's feet to the fire a bit, and says, we're going to take illegal light fixtures pretty seriously, but we're going to give you a year grace period to go and change your light fixtures if they're determined to be illegal, and again, that are unlawful, which means they never ever complied with the town's code. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That makes it makes sense, and I think that currently at this point, the non-conforming stuff, I think that it really moves us forward and gives us time to continue thinking about it. But I think that we're going to run into a lot of legal non-conforming stuff, and it's going to take a lot of work. So that being said, my opinion for right now would be to strike number 2.
Okay, so I guess if that's the case, I don't know. Did you have any comments on this? I have no comments on this. So
Linda has her hand raised.
Yeah, I am so sorry, guys. I have to leave for a few minutes and go get my son from the Minturn Fitness Center. So
what would your choice be on this, Amanda? If we
I
take
already said, I mean, I just don't feel like there's enforceability. So when there's no enforceability, I feel like it's something we could add in the future. But I understand everybody else's point of view, and I'm happy to support leaving it in either. I don't think it's, I
So
don't.
do we need Madison to give you a hand raise of who's for, who's against on this one?
Yeah, right now I have 2 for striking it.
I'll be back.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
I vote for talking to Rob and coming back and talking to us about what Rob says, because I think that has a lot of bearing on it, and it may clear itself up in Michael's direction. And if Rob has the appetite for it, I mean, Rob definitely knows and sat on planning commissions, so he's well versed in what this means, and how this kind of, it's obviously a hot topic. So I think that it's not something we're going to solve tonight, and that we should see what Rob wants to do and then make a decision, at the next time we visit this and decide what to do about paragraph 2.
Eric? Okay, Eric?
I'm for keeping it.
Okay. Daryl?
I'm for keeping it.
I'm for
Okay. Okay, keeping it while also
Talk to
talking
Rob.
to Rob.
for
Yes.
now. Yes,
Keeping it while talking to Rob, his one.
yes.
What do we got? Sorry, Madison. I'm sorry. Well, how many, what did we go? Who's voted for talking to Rob?
Four of us.
4 people.
4 people. Okay. Yeah, I have no issue with, yeah. I think talking to Rob was a good idea as well, but it's okay. You already got the 4, but I don't have any issue with that.
Okay, everybody's okay with that, which then takes us to page, Madison, you're clear on page 69. Page 70,
I have nothing.
I don't have anything.
Amanda's gone. Michael?
The only thing that I saw on that, which, you know, staff is identifying concerns. I mean, I guess basically we're just pretty much, even though we're talking about, you know, new subdivisions and stuff, I don't know, and it would be a question for Scott. I don't know how that lighting would, the height of the lighting would be determined for people that like have lights on their decks or something, you know, because some people are going to build subdivisions with, you know, anyway, existing subdivisions that we have with lights on their decks with that 8-foot or whatever measurement that you had. Would that butt heads with somebody's lighting on their deck that's higher than that? Was just
What
something.
number is it, Michael?
Yes.
Page 70, what number?
Page 76, height restrictions near the bottom. Yes, it would, which is why we were just like, we would like to explore looking at this because there's issues that we identified here.
It makes no sense, quite frankly, to limit the height of an exterior light fixture on a residential building because of things like people's decks or balconies or it seems problematic. And I quite frankly had never noticed this in our existing code before. You know, height limits on light poles in parking lots is something that's, you know, more common. In my mind, as long as the light fixture on a new house is dark sky compliant and cast light downward, I don't think we should be regulating where on a building it goes.
Agreed.
So you think we should strike that part, Scott? Is that what staff would recommend?
It's something we should look at further.
Yeah, so so paragraph A, the stuff that's strike through, that's existing code language. And what I tried to do is reformat that into this table. And I think I followed what's into the code, but there are issues with the height limitations that I believe are in the existing code. And I think to Scott's point, I mean, I've seen most codes I've seen, the light fixture height for parking lots is 25, 30 feet. It's not 15 feet. And, you know, for buildings, it could be lighting can't be installed above the eave line or so. So you don't have people installing lights on the roof. But I think what's in the code today is it just doesn't work.
So we need to look at it further.
Yeah. We can come back with some recommendations. It's something we just noted. And again, if the planning commission has any direction, that certainly would be helpful. But I think it's something we need to spend some more time on and come back with some options for you guys.
Okay, who says yes to that?
Well, I mean, if we're striking that, all that stuff above it, don't we have to strike that chart, the table?
I was just talking about the chart, but as well as obviously what they were saying is that it would be the new code compliant lighting that, you know, what has been recommended moving forward, you know, as far as new light fixtures and all that stuff. But I would think you could just strike the chart, but maybe I was reading it wrong. What do you think, Joe?
I think the whole thing needs to be really looked at, chart and paragraph.
So So to clarify, the table was an attempt to take, because what's in the code today is a lengthy I mean, it's what paragraph A is there. It's all that language that's struck through is the existing code language related to lighting, height. And what I tried to do is reformat that into a table. So hopefully it's a little, or it's easier to interpretate for folks using the code. That said, the maximum heights that are in there, that's what's in the code today. And I think from staff's perspective, those maximum heights are they just don't work.
Right.
So
I agree.
you know,
with-
I think the goal would be, unless the table is problematic, try to keep that sort of format, but change the height limitations.
Yeah, I think that, you know, I agree with Lynn, but you know, I think that Scott has good perspective on this in regards to, you know, technically some people, you know, that are building new houses, or for example, like the lofts, you know, next to the wing place, like they definitely have lights on their decks, which they should be allowed to have lights on their decks. But, you know, I actually worked on those decks, that I could tell you that those lights, the decks themselves are 35 feet off the ground. So, you know, you gotta, you know, it gets really tricky, you know, when you know, start putting a height, as long as it shines down and everything, you know, that we're looking forward to doing, you know, and changing our light code, as long as it complies with that. I think that it's going to get tricky as far as, you know, coming up with heights, but like Lynn said, it's something really good. And, you know, I would agree with her for as far as, you know, you got staff works on it more, Matt works on it more, and think about everything that we just talked about and what Scott mentioned, and, you know, and bring something back to us in that regard. I would recommend.
What I would like to do, Matt, I'm not necessarily opposed to the table, but I think this boils down to, like you said, if we had a provision that basically said, you know, no lighting fixtures above the eave line, that addresses what could be an issue, right? And then we had a section that deals with height limitations for parking lots or light poles. The rest of this, I mean, to Michael's point, if you have a deck and you have a door that accesses the deck, you have to have a light by building code. So
Yep.
you're like, some of this stuff makes no sense.
Right.
Just get rid of it. But we do need a limit on the height of parking lot lighting, and we don't want people putting light fixtures on their roof, unless it's Christmas, of course.
No,
that-
I hear that. That makes sense. And in the table, if that doesn't make sense to include, that's totally fine. I mean, I could really see it being two new paragraphs that
Yeah.
are sentences that say, you know, building lighting shall be installed or can't exceed the eave line of the building or whatever the right height is, and then lighting in a parking lot has a maximum height of that 30 feet or whatever. Where it's
right.
the problem is the existing code language. Again, it's this long run-on paragraph that's,
Mhm.
when I read it, it was very hard to decipher what it was getting at. And again, I think the limitations that are in there, and maybe I read it wrong, but it really seems it just doesn't work. So I agree, Scott.
Okay. Can we get some, I don't want to, Lynn, anybody else want to chime in before we get direction?
Carol,
Scott, on page 71, number B, the next thing, it's talking about those heights, like directly over the door, like you were saying, also like what Mike was saying, directly over the deck. It's pointing down to the directly down to the surface. Is that right?
Yes.
Correct. That's the
That's
new
addressing-
lighting.
That's addressing those two items.
But we need to strike all the language about the height of it.
Yeah.
okay, so that is going back to the drawing board. Let's put it that way. May I have a hands on that?
Okay.
Okay.
Hands up. Hands up.
And
Page
Scott,
71.
that works too, because you've seen buildings, whether they're commercial or residential, where there is tasteful lighting that can go in a soffit that still does not exceed the eave to downcast on the side of a house. And that would still comply.
Correct.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Page 71?
No,
No.
No,
No,
Page 72?
no,
no.
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 To step back quickly on page, I think it's 71. I'm sorry, I'm just following along in the draft of Article 3, but page 28 in the actual document, there's a prohibition on exterior fluorescent tube lighting in the code today. And Scott Mattis and I talked about this. In other codes I've worked in, there's kind of a list of really light bulb types that seem to be typically prohibited. Like one is mercury vapor lamps. So we were going to do a little bit more research and maybe bring back some other suggestion for light types, really light bulb types that we may want to consider prohibiting.
that's fine.
I'm good with that.
Well, you can't buy those mercury lights anymore, I don't think.
Yeah, and I'm guessing you don't want light bulbs with mercury in them. But again, the other ones are like have sodium in them. They're probably outdated and they may be, you can't buy them anymore. But I've seen in many codes I've worked in where there's kind of a handful of light bulb types that are just seem to be pretty standard across the board. They're just not allowed. And there's, again, if there's mercury, there's probably good reason for that.
We did it.
We did it.
Okay,
Next, managers report. Anybody have anything?
No.
It's a big packet this week.
oh, it's duplication of the law.
And we don't need all the pictures. Okay. Planning commission comments. Eric, thank you for all your help the last 2 years, was it?
Yeah, I just want to thank you guys for letting me be a part of everything. I really feel like I learned a lot, and I'm sorry I'm not continuing. I have a lot going on these next 2 years and stuff like that. It's just kind of a big commitment with the boys going to college and stuff like
your mind, you can always come back.
that. It feels like there's a bunch of people that want to be a part of this, so I have to wait in line, I think.
Sometimes there is and sometimes there isn't.
Yeah, for sure. I'll always keep that in
Really
mind. Thank you
appreciate
guys.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah.
I
You,
know
Eric.
what you mean by learning. It's a big learning experience and it just continues. So anytime, tell them that you're out there waiting if need be.
I will, absolutely.
Anybody
You're
else?
always
you gonna
welcome at
miss
our
this?
meetings. So
Yeah,
you
you're always
can
welcome
to the
to
audience.
I don't know if I'll be until 9 o'clock. It's an easy one this time.
I'm back, by the way.
Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Amanda.
Eric, now you can come say all the things that you couldn't say.
Yes,
Yeah, all the things I couldn't say. Yep. Absolutely.
that's what Brian says he's going to do from council. Okay, anybody else have any comments?
Nope.
Future meetings, April 8th. Everybody here? Tell me the story.
Yes.
April 22nd, everybody here?
No.
No.
Okay, now hold on. No,
So that's spring break. And we were looking at potentially moving that meeting. We have a 5th week in April. Real quick, polling people.
that can be-
If we moved it to April 29th, would people be available?
Yeah.
I think I am, but I'd have to go.
I am.
Okay. Michael, Daryl?
Yeah, it's the 5th week I am, but not the 22nd.
I don't know. I have to check my wife's family schedule on that.
Okay. Keep me posted.
Jeff,
Obviously
are
we
you?
have another meeting. between here and then, and I need to check with Melissa, our new planning commissioner, on her
Okay,
availability.
so I have Amanda's here, Daryl's here.
I'm here, but I'm supposed to be at a soccer game at Battle Mountain. It's the last home game.
Oh, that's important. You need to attend that.
Yeah. So
I will call you. I mean, I think I'm here. I have a couple things planned this spring, but I don't think there's anything that last
Okay.
week.
And it could be that Scott and Matt and I are still working to put stuff together, and we might not. At this point, I don't have any active applications for like no DRBs or anything like that that's scheduled for that second meeting in April. So maybe y'all will all get a break and you won't have a second meeting in April.
Vacation. With that, anything else? Anybody have anything?
no.
Okay, what comes next? Eric, take it.
Thank you all. That was rock star kind of stuff. We made good time, and you all did your homework. So thank you very much.
Eric, would you like to wrap us up tonight?
Oh, I'd like to make a motion to end this meeting on March 25th.
May I have a second?
I second it.
Motion by Eric, seconded by Amanda. Good night.
Good
Good night,
night.
guys. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thank you.